Ooh, is it working? I think it's working. This is awesome. Yay, conferences a go. I am going to start inviting all of my speakers. So anybody who's watching right now, thank you for your patience. Again, I'm just kind of getting us started here, and I'm going to start inviting everybody. Okay, let's get Alicia on here. We're going to have such a great talk today. Getting all my links all over the internet. So yeah, I've got Alicia is going to be one of our first people up, and she's the founder of Magnificent Movement. She does a Facebook group called Studio Soultrepreneurs, and she's always posting amazing stuff up there. Cannot wait to see what she has to talk about today. Chasta Hamilton is a really good friend of mine. Teach classes for her, and she's amazing. She's just multi-talented, and she's going to be talking about accepting change today, which everybody goes through. And then Maria Lyons, I worked for her in college, and she is going to be talking about how to talk to dance parents without being a total jerk, which is something that she is really, really good at. So that's going to be fun. If anyone's watching this right now, again, we're kind of just getting started and getting all my people connected, and right about 1 o'clock is when I'm going to start kind of getting going on the content. But yeah, I wanted to do this live stream because I work all the time, and I work 2 full-time jobs. I didn't really have a chance to go to a lot of different conferences. I know there's a lot of opportunities out there for dance teachers, but I don't really have the money to go to any of those. And so I wanted to make sure that I gave some opportunities to people who are in that same situation and cannot take a whole weekend off or a whole week off to go to a conference, but still want to get some new ideas and be educated. So far, everybody is having a good day. I know I totally overbooked myself today. I've got a wedding to go to at 5 o'clock. Oops. Our school year starts on Monday. And I'm only about 50% done with my lesson plan. So that's okay, because that's actually what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, like I said, I wanted to just start, creating resources and opportunities for dance teachers to educate themselves, to find new experiences. And not all of us can afford to go to a week-long conference, or even just taking off the time at work to be able to go to something like that, let alone being able to pay for it, is kind of a big ordeal. So I figured, why not online? I mean, that's the generation that we're in. That's the culture that we're a part of now. Is we're all just busy people, and everything is on the internet. I mean, you sign up for things on the internet. I mean, my business revolves around the internet. So, why aren't we not using the internet efficiently and effectively for dance teachers, and really even for dance parents? Today, I'm hoping to really just see how it goes, and hope that it's successful, and that people get a lot out of it, and we can do repeat sometime in the future. And maybe it will become a little bit more regular and less odd for something like this to be available to people. So yeah, let's see if I've got a couple more minutes. Put you in here. All right. So yeah, the internet, and trying to educate people online. That's, you got to do what you can with what you got, and that's the society that we live in now. We've got parents that are super busy, running all over the place. We've got kids that their parents want them to be well-rounded and, diverse, and they want to have like a really, really broad understanding of a whole bunch of different things. And the problem with that is you end up becoming a jack of all trades, but you don't really get good at anything. And their attention span shortens because they're not used to having to focus on something for a long period of time and pour effort into it and focus on it. In fact, at one point in time, I actually asked my students, what does the word focus mean? And they couldn't answer me. They didn't really even know what the word focus meant, which kind of scared me a little bit. And so I had to explain it to them. And the phrase that I am sticking with is forcing your brain to not get distracted. And I think they kind of got a good understanding of that. And so, just because of the society that we live in, our kids are just kind of all over the place. And so one of the downsides of that is we have shorter class periods. Shortest class that I've ever taught is 30 minutes long. That's pretty short. When I was training as a dancer, my classes were 3 hours long, and they were 4 times a week. And then I had an hour of conditioning afterwards, and then on Saturdays we had rehearsal. It was a lot, and that's what I'm used to. And so, when I started teaching both in college and now that I've graduated, and am teaching at a studio regularly, having 30 and 45-minute class periods is really hard to use your time effectively. And so there's a couple ways that you can really tap into all the stuff that you want to cover, fully explain the concept to your students, and make sure that they really get it. And it doesn't take 3 hours. Now, if you want the muscle memory and you want students who are able to execute dance very well, then you're going to have to invest a little bit more time. But for the general sort of recreational students, kids that take dance and soccer and music and gymnastics and all this other stuff, and you're trying to get some basic technique and some basic skills in their 45-minute session, there's a very simple way of laying out your class so that you can get the most out of your session. And so that is kind of what I'm going to be talking about here over the next few minutes. If you go to the link in the bottom of the YouTube page, there will be a list of downloads, and you can download notes from today's speakers. I have a little handout there that you can kind of follow along with what I'm going over, but it's basically how to plan a really good, concise class and teach a concept in 30 minutes, and it works. And so this idea that I go through is called concept before content. Basically, this is how it works. When we teach English, we don't start by having them write sentences, right? We teach letters, and then we teach how to read, and then we teach grammar, and then we have them come up with creative writing and putting together sentences on their own. When we teach math, we don't start with multiplication drills. We start with numbers and understanding the concept of numbers and number lines and addition, and then multiplication, and then the quadratic equation after that. But we don't start by having them drill complicated stuff. And so it is funny that in dance, one of the first things that we do is have them start drilling combinations and steps and exercises. To me, that seems so backwards. It doesn't make sense. Why would we start with plie? Why would we start with tendu? Yes, they are the basics. Yes, they are the foundation of ballet. But why would we start with these steps when they don't understand what's going on in their body while they're doing it? So the way that I teach is kind of inside out. I teach concept before content. And this is how it works. You experience a concept. Let's say I am teaching elongation of the muscles. Okay, I'm going to put together an exercise or a stretch or a combination that is going to force the students, and by force I mean if they're going to fall on their face if they do it incorrectly. They have no choice but to do it correctly in order to succeed. They feel and connect with the concept of elongation or whatever it is that I'm talking about that day, and put them in that position where they experience that concept. Then we put that same concept and we apply it to several different exercises. Let's say we experience elongation and I ask them to elongate their legs through skipping across the floor, or we lay on the floor and put our legs up in the air and make them elongate their legs up towards the ceiling, or elongating the arms and experiencing, okay, now you know what it feels like with your legs, now we need to do it with your arms. Okay, now they understand the concept of elongation, which applies to this step and this step and this step and this step and this step. So rather than teaching the steps and trying to make all the different little corrections and fix every single step, instead, I like to teach the concept first and then the application to all these different little, all these different steps. And so that's what I mean by concept before content. So again, if you look on your handout that I have on the website, this is planning short classes. How to use your time wisely and effectively. So if you scroll down just a little bit, there will be a 30-minute class breakdown. And this is what I use to plan my kids classes, my creative movement classes, any kind of short class period. It can also be changed to a 45-minute period if you're lucky enough to have that much time. So the first 5 minutes or so is kind of focus and assessment. And one of the things that I'd like to do is I get a whiteboard marker and I will draw something on the board, and that kind of just engages the students and gets them to connect with what I'm doing and what I'm saying. And it gets them kind of tuned into whatever it is that we're happening that day. Now, on that same side, while I'm doing that, I can also look around and see, okay, who's missing? Are the kids that are here today in their mode, in their mindset that they're in, are they going to be able to handle the concept that I'm planning on teaching today? Are they going nuts and bananas crazy, or are they focused? Did they all have sugar, or did they all eat peanut butter and jelly for lunch? Like, is this kid just running around being crazy, or am I actually going to be able to teach this? And so that first couple minutes with you kind of gathering them together, it really shouldn't even take 5 minutes. It really should just take 2 or 3 minutes for you to kind of get them all focused. You can do a group building exercise. I don't personally recommend any sort of game that involves talking, because once you start talking, they pretty much just don't stop talking. But something to kind of get them focused on what you're about to do. Then you spend about 5 minutes teaching the main objective, which is the concept. So let's say I'm talking about rotation of the hips. So I'm going to teach the idea of rotation. I'm going to spend 5 minutes just breaking it down, being really careful, putting my hands on my students and having them demonstrate things, just really engaging them and getting them part of this learning process, and being really careful answering all their questions. The next 15 minutes, which is the bulk of your class, is, and you can stretch it to 20 if you're lucky enough to have that much time, is taking that concept that you've learned and replicating it in various different exercises. I recommend 3 to 5 exercises. So pick 5 exercises that are going to force the student to feel what you just taught them. So if I'm teaching rotation, I will have my students lay on the floor with their legs in the air and turn their hip knobs so that they rotate their legs into a diamond and then close them back up. Now they've just experienced that. Then we stand up in first position and we demi-plie, and we try to experience that same feeling in first position, demi-plie. Then we do this exercise, then we do that exercise. We just keep going back over and over and over again to that concept that we just work on. That's the content. So you teach the concept first, then go into the content and let them feel and experience and understand and relate to the concept. That's the bulk of your class. Okay, then you have a last sort of 5 minutes to reinforce that same idea. This is a great time to do like a freeze dance for younger kids, or a game for the older ones. A couple weeks ago, I had my kids break into groups and make up their own Grand Allegro combination. They got a kick out of it. I thought it was the best thing ever. And it reinforced all of the different steps and good technique. They were having to teach it to each other and remind each other of things. And it was really good. They had a lot of fun. But they all know all of those steps now. They're not going to forget about them because they spent time reinforcing that exercise and that concept. So, you know, or a discussion question for the older ones. You know, can you explain this concept to me? Pretend that I have no idea what this means. Explain it to me. Teach it to me. Show it to me. Even kids 9, 10, 11 years old love being the teacher and taking over. They love it. They get a kick out of it. Last 5 minutes of class, pick somebody. Hey, pretend I have no idea what this means. Teach it to me. They love it. They think it's the best thing ever to get to be the teacher. So, and that is basically a consolidated class in 30 minutes. And so that's the best way that I am able to use my time wisely in classes. Like I said, I'm personally used to very, very long sessions. But when in our society today, sometimes we just don't have that luxury. Sometimes we have kids that only take ballet once a week for 30 minutes, or last year I had a kid who took a 45-minute class with me every other week. In 1 week, she would spend Saturday with mom and she went to ballet, and the other week she'd spend Saturday with dad, and he wasn't interested in taking her. She was still in recital. She still knew the dance. She wasn't very good, but she knew the dance. She knew the choreography. And she got enough from these consolidated snippet classes that she was able to participate without feeling like she was flailing, or just completely like this thing that we have with kids with their arms and all this. Oh God, it's so bad. Anyway, so yeah, that's how I use my time effectively. Little things that you can do to tune them in.
at the beginning for that first couple minutes. I love drawing for my students. They think it's so great. My little ones, I like to draw a picture of a spider, and I call him Harry the Tap Dancing Spider. And he hides all day and comes out in the studio at night and practices the steps that he watches the kids do. And so whenever there's a spider in the studio, which there's not that many of them, but every once in a while you find one and the kids all freak out. And I'm like, that's just Harry, don't worry about him. And they're chill out a little bit. And it's a fun little thing to get them kind of engaged and focused on me. Another one is my stars and minus signs, which I like to start off with at the beginning of the year because it reinforces the concept of muscle memory. I refer to it all throughout the year and they know what I'm talking about. And it's very visual and concrete, and it helps them understand why they need to do things correctly the first time and not do things wrong on purpose. I don't know how many of you teachers out there have that issue with students just like sort of doing eye service where they're doing it okay while you're watching, and then you turn around and they think you can't see them for whatever reason. We're in a room of mirrors and they don't think that we can see them, and they're like kind of doing this halfway thing. I've seen, Aisha Pays like this. Like, what are you doing? Come on, man. You're giving yourself minus signs. So I'm going to explain the stars and minus signs thing a little bit more a little bit later, depending on how much time we have. But if you would like the link to that video, I've done a whole video on my stars and minus signs concept. Even kids as young as 6 and 7 are able to understand it. And it's made a huge difference in my students being able to understand muscle memory, how your brain works, how your body works, and even just wanting to practice. They don't do things once and stop and be like, okay, I got it. They want to keep doing it over and over and over and over again. And it's a really cool way of explaining things to kids. So I'll draw that up on the board. And again, I'll go over that a little bit later. Another fun thing to do is to draw shapes. Kids are very related to shapes. So when I teach balance, I'll draw a diamond and then a pencil and then a diamond. And I teach them, you step onto this foot, make a diamond, step back onto that foot, make a pencil, fall forward on your pencil, make another diamond. None of my kids have issues with balance. It's like the easiest thing on the planet to teach. It's really weird, but it's so easy to teach with shapes. And they stand there, diamond, pencil, diamond, and they get it, and it's not a problem. But if I just say it, it's one thing. If I draw it, it's something that they can visualize. It's concrete. And kids are very visual. Not every kid is a visual learner, but for the most part, kids are pretty visual. Almost anything can be translated into shapes. Padishahs or diamonds and arrows. Shuffles. I like to draw an arrow going forward and then an arrow going backwards. That kind of alleviates the backwards shuffle thing that you get with itty bitty ones. Anatomy, bone structure, hip knobs, rib cages, shoulders. The other day I drew the inside of a pelvis and the hip knob and the shape of the femur coming out, and what happens when you turn the knob, and they're, oh, that's how, yes, that's what I mean when I say turn your knobs. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, drawing pictures. What's really fun is to take a white erase or a dry erase board marker and draw on the mirror, because mirrors are the dry erase board markers wipe right off. And the first time you do it, they're going to freak out. They'll be like, oh, she's drawing in the mirror. Oh my God. And they won't forget whatever you're about to teach. They won't forget it because they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's that one time that she drew it on the mirror. Ha, it's funny. And they get a kick out of stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's how I get the most out of my short periods. And I'm now going to hand it over to Alicia. I cannot wait to hear what she has to talk about. She runs the Studio Soultrepreneur group on Facebook, and she also has the Confident Dance Studio, and she is always putting Facebook Live posts up, and I've gotten a lot out of everything that she has to say. So I'm just going to switch Alicia over here and take it away. Can I hear you?
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Okay.
Yay. Hello, everybody. Hi. Thanks for having me, Haley. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. Now, I know I'm probably talking to studio owners and teachers. So I thought, what better thing to talk about than creating kind of a drama-free class, because that's what a lot of teachers who I talk with, that's part of their problem, is they maybe have a great curriculum and a great lesson plan, but they need help handling behaviors. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to jump over, and I don't know if I'm going to disappear or not. I've never tried this before, but I'm going to share my screen because I have a couple slides today for you guys. Let's see here. Desktop. Bear with me here. Okay. Are you seeing my screen at all?
We are seeing your screen.
Are you seeing slides?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't see any chat questions, so you're going to have to just let me maybe bounce back and forth here. Okay. But so today we're talking about putting the joy in joyful. That's what my program. So I have the Confident Dance Studio, as Haley said. I have the Dance Studio Soulpreneur Group, but I also have this Magnificent Movement, which is a teaching method for early childhood classes. And so that's another thing that I do, is I have this teaching method that I train all of my teachers in, that I train other teachers in. It's an online course now. So that's actually where part of this training is coming from. It's coming from one of these modules. And I'll show you how you can get the rest of the module later. But we'll go ahead and dive in, and I'll just introduce myself. Well, if you haven't heard of me, my name is Alicia Jonas. I am a studio owner. I am in my 12th season. It seems like it just started yesterday. I know many of you can relate. It's like I learn something new every day. Sometimes it does feel like 12 years. Some days are very long and difficult, but for the most part, it feels like I just started yesterday. I also have 3 young boys. Of course, that's the irony in my life, is I'm a studio owner and a dancer, and I have all boys. Of course, the irony is amazing. I am a business coach for dance studios at the Confident Dance Studio, and I am a mentor at Magnificent Movement Teaching Method for early childhood dance, as I said. So we're going to talk a little bit about healthy enrollment. So we're going to talk about this enrollment period here. So pyramid. So when you have a healthy enrollment at your studio, you want most of your students to be in the early childhood age groups, and then moving up to the school age. And then at the top, the smallest group should be your intensive level dancers. And the reason for that is you want to build your strong foundation full of students. So as they get older and as they maybe fall off for other activities or lose interest, that you still have a strong, solid foundation to grow up into your studio. Many studios that I have talked to have kind of the reverse of this, where they have great competition programs, a lot of older students, and then they have a very small preschool program. And I'm about to say that you better try to work to fix that right now, because in about 5 or 10 years, you're not going to have any students left if you're not building that strong foundation right now. And if you're not sure why your foundation isn't big, we need to look at either your teachers, we need to look at maybe your curriculum or your program, we could look at marketing. There's so many things that we could look at, and that's what I help studio owners do. Is I help them look at, like, where are people falling off? What is the reason that they're falling off? Is it that maybe your teachers aren't able to provide a great class for their preschoolers, and so they lose interest after a year? Is it that you're not marketing to the right audience to bring in preschoolers? These are all things that we could look at. But just so you know, I want you to be looking at this. So maybe today or next week, if you're a studio owner, this is particularly something that you should be looking at, is go back and look at your classes and your enrollment and see what kind of shape it is. Is it a pyramid like this? Is it an upside down pyramid? Is it kind of an hourglass shape? And then we can start making tweaks to fix it. You know, information is power, knowledge is power. And then we can go forward once we have that information. Okay, so building a firm foundation. First and foremost, I say impart joy. You need your classes to just be amazing, incredible, memorable experiences for children. And then they're going to want to come back. They're going to want to recommend their friends join. They're going to want to just be a part of the community and the happiness that is your studio. And that's all tied into your culture as well. Having a great, joyful class just carries through your studio, makes the whole culture of your studio just elevated. And then everybody wants to be a part of it. Everybody wants to join in. It just, and the other thing is that when you have joyful kids in your studio and they grow up and become joyful tweens and joyful teenagers, that is just the most incredible feeling and the best testament for your studio and the growth of your studio. And, you know, I know we're all interested in having a strong, healthy studio. You know, it's important for job security for our teachers. It's important for providing a great business for the community to support the families and create more jobs. It's important for the studio owner to have something that they can provide jobs for other people, you know? Okay, so to create joy, impart joy in your classroom, there's a couple things. So this is, like I said, this is coming from one of my modules in Magnificent Movement. So we're just going to touch on a couple things, and then I'll tell you how you can get the rest of the information later. So first, we're going to create consistency in the classroom. So within that, we need to talk about the flow of activities. You know, as Haley was talking about how she incorporates different sections into her kind of limited class time, the same thing. I would say when we have a consistent flow of activities in our classes, that is really beneficial to the students and keeping their behaviors in line and making the class as happy as possible. So we always have a certain way that we start the class. We always have a certain thing that we do second. We always kind of, within a structure of our class, we always have a couple different, you know, for example, a ballet class, we start at the bar and then we move to center and then we might do across the floor. And then at the end, we might do, you know, a petit allegro or something like that. Same thing with a children's class. We have, you know, we take attendance at the beginning. Maybe we do some stretches. Maybe we do something at center. Maybe we do something across the floor. Maybe we do a combination at the end. And then we do something fun at the end to close out the class and send them out into the world just smiling and excited and exhilarated from having accomplished just a great class. That's how I try to send my kids out into the world. We always do leaps at the very end of class. That's just the way we do it. That's how my program, I recommend you do it, but it could be some other super joyful thing that you do. Maybe there's a certain song that you sing, or maybe you have the kids chime in and answer a question at the end or something like that. Just something that makes them feel really great and sends them out to their parents in the lobby just excited and smiling and laughing and just excited to come back next week, okay? So think about the flow of activities and try to keep the same thing from week to week. And that will cut down on a lot of problems right there. Because when you change things up, kids don't know what to expect. That's when a little bit of the behavioral issues can come in. Okay, the other thing is consistency and dress code. You know, you may or may not have a dress code for your studio or for the preschool classes, but if there is, then you need to be consistent in kind of upholding that so that one student doesn't get to wear this super fun tutu. Like I had a student one time who came in and she had a tutu that had bells in it. And I was like, oh, Lordy, now all the kids are going to follow suit and bring their tutu. And sure enough, next week there came in other dancers that had tutus that had flower petals in them and tutus that had, you know, sequins all over that were falling on the floor. So think about the dress code and how it can minimize disruptions, but also be consistent in kind of upholding that. You know, you don't need to be strict about it. I would just, you know, mention it to the parents, okay? Say, just to minimize distractions, we would prefer they wear this. And, you know, let me know if that's going to be an issue because we need to make sure that we're having the best experience possible for all the kids and they're not being distracted by a tutu with bells in it, for instance. Okay. All right. Another way to offer consistency is if this, then that. So there's tons of scenarios that we could talk about. So if we're starting class and you come in the room, then you sit on this line. Or if you need to go to the restroom, then you must raise your hand. Or if you have a question, then you raise your hand. Or if you need the teacher's attention, you call your teacher Miss Alicia, or whatever you would like to be called. Your just your first name. I get called teacher a lot still. So, whatever it is, you can kind of lay out these scenarios, and you don't have to be, like I said, I'm never one for a strict, tough love atmosphere. That's not what I'm about. That's not what my studio is about. That's not what my program is about. But, you can say, well, next time you go to the bathroom, just remember to do this. You don't have to lay down the law, but we're just kind of training them, like, what your expectations are. What are the expectations for, what do you do in between activities? Do you sit against the wall, or do you, stand on an X in the center of the room? What do they do? Okay, so think about that. What are your expectations? And they need to be age appropriate as well. Like a 2-year-old may not be able to stand still for a long period of time, but a 6-year-old can, okay? All right, now we're gonna create consistency in behaviors. Again, setting age-appropriate expectations and keeping their age in mind. So a 2-year-old maybe won't be able to raise their hand and ask a question. So just know that. Don't come down on them. That's just what they're going to do. A 3-year-old may be able to raise hand, but they might get distracted easily, or they might blurt out things, like raise their hand and blurt something out instead of waiting to be addressed by the teacher. Okay, so all of these expectations, keep in mind the child's age. Of course, that's one of the most important things. We can't hold a 2-year-old to the same standard that we hold a 10 or 11-year-old. So I would hope that as dance educators, we all are familiar with that, but it's just a reminder, okay? Rewards. So we want to be, okay, here's my take on rewards, is I don't give stickers, I don't give candy, I don't give anything like that to my class. And I have excellent behaving students, because my thought on rewards is, you are the reward. As the teacher, you are the reward, and the experience is the reward, okay? And I know many of you might disagree with me on that, but I think we can't always give or withhold rewards based on children's behavior, because we don't know the whole story. And that's a whole other topic that I talk about in my course. There's more to the story than just how they're behaving in class. It has to do with what's going on at home, what's going on at school, whether they ate that day, whether they napped that day. There are so many factors into their behavior, their emotions, their social, their mental well-being at that moment, that I think that giving or withholding rewards like stickers or whatever can actually be detrimental to them wanting to come back and visit you in the future, okay? You do what you want, do what your studio owner recommends, obviously, but that's my take on it, is you are the reward, okay? Everybody is experiencing you, giving your attention is the reward, okay? So everybody gets equal attention from you, and it's positive attention, and we'll talk about that in a second, okay? Then consequences. So again, I told you I'm not a tough love person. I don't rule my classroom with an iron fist. So consequences, you need to decide the consequences, and definitely according to the age group. What's the consequence? Is it the first time is, that's not an option? And then the second time is, okay, now you're going to sit down and rejoin us when you're ready. And then the third consequence is they're sent out to the lobby. Whatever it is, it needs to be consistent. And each behavior needs to have a consistent consequence. Okay, so if one day a child is climbing on the bars and you ask them, say that's not an option, come rejoin the class. And then next week another child is climbing on the bar and you send them straight out to the lobby, that's not consistent. Okay, so you need to be consistent in how you respond. just so they know how to please you, because students really, they want to please you. They're not going to tell you that, but that's what they want to do. They want you to be happy. They want you to be proud of them. They want your attention. Isn't that what we all want? I mean, even Oprah knows that. We all want attention. So think about that when you're deciding these consequences, that they need to be seen and they want to please you, but we need to be consistent so they know the best way to please us and the best way to do what we're asking and do what they're expected, okay? And then we need to talk about what is over the line for a behavior. You know, I always have this conversation all the time with my teachers. You know, it's what is over the line for being removed from the class or being sent enough that they are sent out into the lobby, or enough that they maybe need to have we maybe needed to have a discussion with the parent whether they need to continue in that class. You know, and I think for me, and obviously you guys might have these stipulations in place as well, it's more about the level of danger for the rest of the students and the level of distraction. So if a child obviously is running around the room and not listening and posing a danger to the rest of the kids, like could knock them down or is biting or something like that, that to me is over the line and an indicator when it happens multiple times that that child is not ready for a structured behavior or a structured activity in our studio, that we don't have the resources to handle a child individually that is acting like that when we have, you know, 8 or 9 other children in the same room. It's not a safe environment. And you also have to think, if a child does cause other students to be injured, you're going to lose those children as well. So if you're thinking about, well, I don't want to lose a student, I don't want to lose that one student, you know, I really need the money, or I really want to have a full class, just think, well, what is the potential of what I can lose? You know, what can I lose if this child knocks down 3 children in class because we didn't remove that child, but that kind of problem child knocked over 3 students and hurt all 3 of them, and now they're going to go home and tell their parents, and their parents are maybe going to pull them out of class, or maybe going to tell other parents, their friends, that, oh, well, my kid got knocked down at that studio. You know, that is potentially more harmful than removing one problem child from the class, okay? Thankfully, I don't think I've ever had to do that. But you want to have this kind of plan in place. You know, what's over the line for complete removal from your program? What's over the line for removing from the classroom for today? And at what point does a discussion need to happen between possibly the studio owner, the teacher, and the parent to come up with a plan? You know, and I would say that not every child that causes a problem once or twice is going to be a problem for the whole semester or the whole year. Like I said, you never know what's going on at home. Maybe their parents are getting divorced. Maybe they had some, they're staying with grandma because mom has some health issues right now. You don't know what's going on. Maybe they just need the extra attention. And you need to show them more love and care and kindness and give them that sort of attention rather than the negative attention that they're probably getting at school, maybe getting at home, maybe getting at grandma's house, maybe getting at the babysitter's, who knows? So just bear that in mind when you're coming to these decisions. I know it's never easy. It's always on a case-by-case basis, but kind of have a plan of what's going to happen and at what point it's going to happen, and maybe a time frame for things of this nature. Okay? All right. So the other way that I like to create a joyful classroom and minimize the drama is by building trust. And that is really the key in any sort of position. Whether you're a studio owner, you're building trust with the parents. When you're a teacher, you're building trust with the kids. If you have a business, it's all about getting them to like you and trust you and know you and feel that you have their best interests at heart, okay? So what I tell my students and also my teachers is, I want you as the instructor to be an equal part kindness and authority. Okay. And by that, I mean, you can be kind, but you can also have expectations and communicate those expectations to them. And it does not have to be in a mean way. It doesn't have to be in a harsh way. You can be kind, but still the authority. And it's all about how you use your language to not lecture and not come down on the students and just say, that's not an option. I use that phrase all the time. That is not an option. Your choices are X or Y, but you can do this with us, or you can sit and watch and return when you're ready. But running around the room all crazy is not an option because it's dangerous. Okay, things like that. Kindness and authority. It doesn't mean that I don't love that child if I tell them that what they're doing is wrong. It just means that I am looking out for their best interest and the safety of other students. Okay. The other thing is unconditional acceptance. Like I said, every student wants to be loved, wants to be nurtured, wants to be cared for, wants to know that they matter to you, wants to know that you're watching them, wants to be seen. Okay. And sometimes kids have rough days. Let's be honest. We've all had those kids that have days where it's a little bit of a struggle. Maybe they don't want to participate. Maybe they're crying. Maybe they say they don't like dance anymore. And I would just say that it's okay. We all have those days. I have those days too, where I just don't feel like doing it. And we just need to accept them and love them where they're at that particular day. Okay. And that's going to build the trust. We don't want to say, well, we only care about you and we only are going to pay attention to you when you're behaving exactly the way we ask you to. We need to accept them, whether they're problems or whether they're our star students, but we need to be firm and fair to all. Okay. And then no egos allowed, I would say. And this is kind of like more for the teacher. I think sometimes when we hear a student say, I don't want to return to dance, or I don't feel like dancing today, we kind of take it personally. And I would say that don't take it personally. Don't let your ego get involved. It's something to do with what's going on with them. It all relates to something, whether they had a long day at school, or they got in trouble at school, or they had a fight with their best friend at the babysitter. Who knows? Maybe they're just craving their mom's attention that day. Maybe they haven't seen their mom all day. I had a student one time who, and as she started when she was little, and then this is kind of as she was growing up through the studio. I think she danced with us until she was about 11 or 12. And her mom was a single mom. And so obviously that comes with its own set of very hard challenges. And so she would go to before school, and then she would go to school all day. And then she would go to a tutor after school. And then after the tutor, she would go to some other babysitter before she would come to dance. So she was gone all day, probably from like 6 in the morning until at least 6 in the evening, all day, having to be on her best behavior all day and focused. And then by the time she got to dance, she was done. Her patience and her focus was completely shot. She was needing attention from a loving adult to bring her back out of it. And some days she didn't want to dance. Some days she just wanted to act out and get that negative attention because it was some sort of attention. And it was rough. It was really rough on us figuring out how to manage that and give her the attention she needed, but convince her that acting out and being kind of the problem child in her class was not the way to get our attention, that we could give her attention other ways for doing things that she was supposed to be doing. So, but if we had just looked at her behavior, or her saying she didn't want to dance and thought it had something to do with us, we would have handled it completely different, right? We wouldn't have taken the time to look into why she was acting that way. Okay. All right. So providing a positive and nurturing atmosphere. Obviously, this is something we strive for. This is something that I think is not new to you as a teacher. You know that we need to be nurturing. We need to be positive. We need to provide the best atmosphere possible. So what I would say is your words have power. I mean, when I think back about when I was a child, and not necessarily in dance, but in school, I had some teachers who were not so nice to me. And I was an angel, of course. You guys all know. I never caused a problem. Actually, I was very rarely in trouble. But there was one particular teacher who said something to me that really hurt my feelings. And it really, even going into like grade school and junior high and high school, it's still kind of, I feel like I have a scar from it. So I would just remind you that every single thing you say to a child has power, and it's your choice whether you use that power for building them up or the otherwise, which I know you don't want to hurt your students. I know you care about your students deeply, but sometimes I think we have to be mindful that some of us kind of speak a little bit bluntly, and sometimes that can come off and be a little bit harsh to a student. So obviously, take care in how you deliver the corrections or the feedback to your students, regardless of their age, because especially as they grow into tweens and teenagers, we know that it's a very tricky time, especially with social media and everything, and how there's bullying going on, and we don't want to contribute to any of that. We want to make sure our students are safe and have healthy social, emotional, and physical lives. We want them to be healthy and not deal with any undue stress, especially under our care. Okay, and that's the other thing is parents know that they're putting their trust in us to provide that to build up their students and to make sure that their students are being nurtured and taken care of and getting the best education possible. So just it's a lot of responsibility. So just remember that you have the power to lift your children up, and I want you to use that the best way you can. Okay, so when I tell my teachers to give positive feedback, I say, even if they're not doing a tendu just right, or they're doing that shuffle wrong, or they maybe don't have a straight leg in their arabesque, whatever it is, there's still ways that we can praise them. Okay, we can praise their effort and their character. And so a couple ways that I do that is I give my teachers and people who are in my course ideas on ways to practice positive praise. So I'll show you some of these. Okay, so some samples would be, I love how you are trying. I can tell you are working hard. You are so kind. You are such a good friend. You are a great listener. I can always count on you. I can tell you are having fun. You have such a good memory, and on and on and on. So these have nothing to do with skill. They have nothing to do with how beautiful they look. This is all character and effort. And so you can make up a whole list of these that you can kind of have maybe in your teaching notebook that you can pull out and just remind yourself before you start teaching. Read through a couple of them and say, okay, today I'm really going to praise kids who are listening really great. Or I say I'm going to praise the good listeners and I'm going to praise the hard workers today. And then kind of just make a point of it. And I try to make a point of saying something positive to every student at least once a class. So that way every student is getting positive praise, even the problem students. As soon as they start listening, I say, oh my gosh, that was great listening. I saw you listening. I know you were paying attention, and I'm so proud of you. Okay, things like that. That goes a long way. And what that does is that just reinforces the behavior. It shows them how much you appreciated that and how proud you are. And then they're going to do it again. They're going to remember that praise and how good it felt. And they're going to do it again and again and again and again and again. And it's just going to make your whole class just so engaged and so interested in making you happy. Like I said, they really want to please you. Okay, so they're going to make you happy by doing all of these things, and other kids are going to notice. So if you praise Susie for how great of a listener she is, little Sam over here is going to start being a good listener too, because she wants that praise too. Okay, so it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds, and it's just an amazing, incredible environment of positivity and just joy, and you don't have the problems when you are doing it this way. Okay, all right, so again, I'll remind you, healthy enrollment, really build up those early childhood classes by creating a joyful environment first and foremost. That's going to carry through your word of mouth advertising, and that's like the best form of advertising. When it's word of mouth, people already feel like they can trust you. If they have a friend that goes to your studio and they're having a great experience and they're going to tell you about it, then you're more likely to do it. You know, it's how social media works. You know, when you share a recommendation on social media, those friends are more likely to trust that business. Okay, so just think about that. How can we build up our early childhood classes to provide great experiences, which carries into great word of mouth, which carries into growing more and more and more and more. And then as they grow up, then you start to develop that pyramid looking enrollment. Okay. All right. So like I said, this is coming from one of my modules in Magnificent Movement. And if you download that module, you'll read this entire training that I just gave, and it goes more in depth into certain things, but also we talk more about student emotions and how they can play into their behaviors in the classroom. Talk about using verbal cues, which is a huge thing that I talk about, that I love using verbal cues to steer behaviors. It's so subtle, but it's so effective that it's almost like I can't believe that I taught for so many years and didn't know how to do this, because it was like a night and day difference when I started using verbal cues in my teaching to steer the behaviors and to show what I was looking for. And like I said, just like with the praise, other students are watching and they see you use these verbal cues on students and they want to get in on it and join in and get that praise too. Okay, there's also a little bit of talk about teacher paradigms in the classroom, which is related to how you prepare yourself for teaching and how your internal, your stress level, your mindset, anything that's going on in your life can carry into the classroom and you don't even know it. Like, for instance, I talk about how I set some boundaries for myself, and I won't check social media or my phone or check emails or take phone calls or take appointments for like a half hour before I teach, because there's too many things that can go wrong. I've been burned too many times by an email from a parent that had a problem, or an appointment that ran late, and then I didn't feel like I was completely in the right mindset for teaching. So all those things, that's another thing that I talk about in this module. So if you want to download that module, here's the address. So it's bit.ly/magnificent movement. You can, so it's a whole PDF. It's like kind of like a workbook almost of this content, as well as the extra content that I just talked about. And so you're welcome to download that and take a look at that and see if that seems like it would be helpful for you. And you could pass it along to your teachers or pass it along to your studio owner if you are a teacher. And you can all, I think if you're all working as a team consistently to implement these sorts of guidelines and these sorts of practices into your studio, you will automatically see a raised level of joy and improved culture in your studio. You know, I think that consistency across a team is really important. And sometimes I think that studio owners have so many responsibilities that that kind of sometimes the curriculum or the teacher training can sometimes end up on the back burner, not intentionally at all, but I think it sometimes can. So if you can get your team doing the same thing and handling kids the same way, it automatically is just going to make your studio more cohesive. Like I said, it's going to improve the culture. It's going to improve the experience for all of your customers around completely around the whole studio, and it's just, I think it's underrated. So that's what I have to say about that. So do you have any questions? Now I can't see the chat box, so I'm going to come out of this screen share. That's my information. Alicia Jonas is my name. Again, confidentdancestudio.com. If you want to reach me and ask me more questions about teaching, or how I train my teachers, or how I handle certain situations, or if you have a special situation you want me to talk to you about, definitely feel free to reach out. I do answer all of my own emails, so just know that it's info@theconfidentdancestudio.com. You can also find me on Facebook in the Dance Studio Soulpreneurs group. You're welcome to join. All right, so I think I'm going to see if I can figure out how to get out of here. Here we go. There we go.
You did it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, hey, there's me.
Yeah, there's you.
All right, cool. Well, Alicia, that was awesome. I really liked what you said about the consistency in the dress code and how you address that. Just being really straight up honest.
Yeah.
With parents, like, hey, it's this really distracting for the other kids to, be watching your kid in tutu while everyone else is wearing, black leotard and pink.
Yeah.
So that was really a really good way of addressing that. I would love to ask you, do you have any specific success stories, so to speak, as far as, maybe problem students who were a big issue and you saw a big change in them, based on some of these things that you've been talking about?
Well, let's see here. I'm sure there are some, but there is one particular student who was not a problem student, but was very, very timid. And I would say that, so when she first started out, she always had to hold my hand. So we would be part of our class. A lot of our classes, we involve a lot of moving in a circular pattern around the room. And so I would hold her hand and we would skip in a circle or gallop in a circle or run in a circle. And she would always kind of flinch whenever anybody came near her. And she was so timid and so shy. And just over the course of, lots of patience and lots of reassurance and lots of building that trust, she did kind of come out of her shell. And now I think she's 13 or 14. And she is blossomed into this amazing, confident dancer that I don't know if dance is completely to credit for that, but I believe that she feels that she is comfortable at the studio now because she's got a group of friends that are supporting her now because she's been there a long time. But just building that trust and the constant reassurance and I can see you're trying. I love how you're doing this. You're doing so great. And her name is Audrey. You're doing so great, Audrey. I love how you're trying and you're not giving up and you're going. And that would be one. I think that's one of my biggest success stories is just this little 3-year-old coming out of her shell to become this mature, confident young dancer who is fully capable of holding her own, doesn't need the constant reassurance anymore, doesn't need anyone holding her hand, obviously. But yeah, I am so proud of her. She's been one of our biggest transformations, I would say, since I started teaching.
That is so cool. That reminds me so much of, I want to say it's my first year working for Chasta, who's going to be talking a little bit later at Stage Door Dance. And I had this class of 5 2-year-olds. And it was a 45-minute session with these 2-year-olds, all creative movement. And I walk in there the first class, I get my music going, we're sitting on the floor, we're clapping our hands, whatever. And the 3 kids of the 5 just start screaming. I mean, belly screaming, like I was worried they were going to throw up.
Oh, no.
And one started screaming, which made the other start screaming, which made the other start screaming. And the other 2 were just sitting there staring at me well, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
one of the hardest teaching experiences of my life. And Chasta came in and she changed my music and she got all bubbly and she's like hugging the kids and we're passing beanie babies around. And, you know, it took 4 weeks of screaming. Mm-hmm. But the 5th week, there was no screaming. And so like that consistency of, you know, you're going to go into the room, you're gonna be away from mom. It's different, but not allowing the kids to, best way to say it is, I guess, walk over you and allow you to break the rules for them because they're crying. I think that's been, you know, one of my biggest struggles for teaching kids, because I hate to see kids cry.
Right.
Or even, you know, parents being like, well, you know, obviously she didn't enjoy that very much. Like how to explain to parents, well, you know, the first couple weeks they are really uncomfortable. This is new, separation anxiety, but having sort of this almost list of success stories to be able to tell people, oh yeah, I mean, I had one that took half a year, but you know, now they're loving it. 3 years later, she's still dancing. It takes a little bit of time, and just sort of relating to parents and being able to explain that kind of stuff to them. You know, that way you have that time to pour into that kid and to really work with them. So that's
exactly
really neat.
Exactly. I would say so. Part of that is the parent education too, the piece of reminding the parent, yes, sometimes it takes 4 weeks, sometimes it takes longer to get to this point, but we can assure you that it's happened before. She's not the first dancer that's had this problem, and she's not going to be the last. And it's just an adjustment period. You know, I think sometimes parents, you know, as parents, we want to keep our children from any pain or anything that might hurt their experience. And like I can relate it to, I just recently I have 2 young boys who are not in school yet, and I just put them in daycare 3 times a week. And this started maybe like 6 weeks ago, and there are still some rough days, but I know, like in my experience as a teacher, that it's still for their benefit. They're benefiting in these ways. You know, they're socializing with other kids. They're getting more education that isn't just from me. You know, they're getting exposed to these new things I don't do or I don't have time to do. And there's just an adjustment period. And I think that, you know, I know they have set expectations at school, so that's good for them, you know, and I think it's just a education of the parent and understanding that there are going to be some rough days, but overall, you know, the teachers are there to still provide that nurturing environment, to still provide them a great experience, and that the experience is going to be there, you know, regardless of how long it takes. If it takes 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, they're still going to get this great experience when they choose to start, you know, when they start making that adjustment. It'll be there. We'll still be there. We'll still be supporting them. We'll still be cheering them on, regardless of whether they're having a rough day or not. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know there's a concept that a mentor of mine would always say, expect and respect the struggle. I feel like kids and parents are afraid of struggling. They're afraid of failing. And especially like I want to say ages 6 to 9 is this really awkward period. Although I think mostly 8-year-olds are the ones that feel it, like they're just a little too awkward and a little too uncomfortable, and they don't really feel comfortable in their bodies yet. And a lot of changes are just starting to happen. You know, they're kind of getting an attitude, and they don't want to fail. They don't want to flail either. And so, you know, one thing that I noticed that she would always do, and I pointed it out to her one day, I was like, you know, I've never seen another teacher do this before. It has really affected me. She would always, not only would she encourage and congratulate the student on working hard, she would congratulate them on struggling. She would literally say, that was a really big struggle for you, and you really struggled through it. That was a good struggle. I'm proud of you for it. And it teaches and reinforces the idea to the students that the only real failure is not struggling, and that there's no wrong with struggling. Struggling is good. We have to encourage that. We have to allow that to happen, because you're not going to move forward without that struggle. And so all of her students, and now mine, are kind of getting it too. Whenever I go back to that concept, they are not afraid to just throw themselves out there and try things anymore. They don't have that sort of reserved body language anymore. They're very much more open to new concepts and new steps and things that they haven't done before. So yeah, it's really exciting to be able to pour into them like that.
Yeah. I love that idea. And it's a great life lesson too, to keep that you're not always going to be comfortable. You have to get uncomfortable sometimes to make progress. So that's I love that. I'm going to have to use that too.
Really great. And like I said, I can't take credit for it. It's Eileen Urick. She has the power dance technique curriculum that she's releasing a new set of videos here in a little bit. And yeah, she's got some really cool stuff that I would encourage any dance teacher to check out. She's a lot of the same stuff that I do, the concept before content kind of idea of teaching. But yeah, no, this has been so great. I love everything that you had to say. It was really awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, if we do have any questions, I'm going to send them your way, and we can kind of, address them after the fact.
Sounds good.
As of right now, I think we haven't gotten too much, textual communication on the different Facebook pages and whatever that I'm posted on. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. It's been a blast. And
thanks for having me, Haley.
Yeah, see you later.
All right, bye.
Bye. So yeah, Alicia is a really cool person, and I think if you haven't already checked out her Magnificent Movement curriculum, definitely get on that. On the downloads page on beyondthebarshop.com, there's going to be a link. If you click on the live stream, there will be a download there on a freebie that she is handing out for us. And so, yeah, just following up on that struggle that I was talking about with the students, and accepting and expecting to struggle with something new. Sometimes if they're really scared, and this is something that they've never done before, the idea of doing something new can be very daunting. And so one of the ways that I tackle that is that phrase, expect and respect the struggle, and then just encouraging them when they do struggle, so that they have a positive idea on struggling. And so one of the ways that you can do that is to ask your student on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's say 1 is you're not putting in a whole lot of effort, you're not working very hard, it's very, very sort of no muscular engagement whatsoever. And then 10 is you are pouring in as much effort as you possibly can. You have never worked harder before in your life on something, whether it be physical, mental, whatever. Where are you on this 1 to 10 scale? And the first couple times that they start thinking this through, they're going to say, I'm thinking maybe I'm a 3, or I think maybe I'm a 5 or a 6. Especially the younger students, they're not going to be able to have a very concrete understanding of where they are on a scale for effort, but being able to measure that is very valuable to them. Like, for instance, if you tell a student, I need you to work harder, that doesn't mean anything to them. If you tell a student, I feel like on a scale of 1 to 10, right now you're at like a 6 and I want you at a 9. Can you do that for me? Can you get yourself to a 9? Most of the time, since that is such a concrete, specific goal, they can, and they will change their effort. I call that effort level or effort quotient. And so you can measure concretely how much effort you're pouring into whatever exercise that you're doing at the time. And so, as somebody who, I've got like, I want to say my biggest class last year was 13 6-year-olds. It's a lot of 6-year-olds. Getting them to all work hard at the same time
was really, really a challenge for me because of the eye service thing. I would work with them and then I'd turn around and I'd work with this kid and then I look back and this one has got their arms flailing all over the place again. It's like, why did you let your effort go down? And so once I introduced this concept to them, they kind of started to increase their effort. And so one way to do that is to say, okay, do the exercise, tell me where you are on your number line. Because by that point, they understand the idea of a number line. And so you get them to feel where they are on their number line. Then you say, okay, we're going to do it again. I want you to go up 2 or 3 points and see if you can stay at that higher point for as long as you can until your body can't take it anymore. And then when they're done, then you go back to embracing the struggle. You really, really struggled with that near the end. I could see you getting a little tired. I think maybe you've lost a couple points, but you really, really worked hard through that, and I'm so happy about it. This combined with the understanding of muscle memory is really valuable to kids, especially in doing it correctly the first time. There was a famous coach, and I don't remember his name now, but he was a basketball coach. And one of the things he said was before he allowed a student to shoot a basketball, he would teach how to do it correctly over and over and over again. He would show it to them over and over again, because he wanted to make sure that they did it correctly from the very first time. And if they did it correctly from the first time, they were pretty much good to go from then on. There would have been a couple of hiccups here and there, but you don't have to retrain. You don't have to fix mistakes that they developed early on. You don't have to fix bad habits. It's a muscle memory thing. The more you go over and over and over something, your body just knows it. And so I have a fun way of explaining muscle memory to my students. And I'm just going to, I think that'll work, put up my little piece of paper up here so that I don't mark on the wall. And when I'm in the dance studio, I will use a whiteboard, or I will, depending on the studio, I'll use the mirror. As I mentioned before, if you draw on the mirror, the kid's like, oh my God, she's drawing on the mirror. Oh, but mirrors are basically dry erasable, and they're not going to forget whatever you say. It kind of freaks them out at first, and it's really funny. I'm not a mean teacher at all, I promise. Anyway, this is how I explain muscle memory to my students, and I find it is very, very helpful in getting them to not hate doing things over and over again. I say to them, this is your class time. This is your 45-minute session right here, okay? I'm going to teach you a brand new step. You've never done it before. Are you going to do it perfectly? Probably not. You're going to get a minus sign for that one. And there's 2 things that you can get. You can get a star or a minus sign. Okay, you're going to do it. You're not going to do it correctly. You're going to get a minus sign. You're going to do it again. You get another minus sign because it wasn't perfect. The thing about dance is it's perfect or it's wrong. There is no 95% correct. It's perfect or it's wrong. So you're going to get another minus sign. And then you're going to do it again. You're going to get another minus sign. And then you're probably going to get one right. So you get a star. And then you're going to do another one that's not quite right, and another one that's not right, and another one that's not right, and you're going to get another star, and you might get another star in a row. And then you're going to do a couple of more incorrect ones. And just over your class period, you're going to end up getting a series of stars and minus signs. Your goal is to eventually get all stars in a row without any minus signs in there, right? And so this is the concept of doing something over and over and over again and getting better with time. So they learn that through these very, very concrete and very badly drawn stars and minus signs. The thing about muscle memories, though, and the wonderful thing about our society is kids understand how computers work, so this actually makes sense to them. You can't just easily delete these minus signs. They're still there. You can't just delete them, okay? In ballet, you don't get to just go into your brain and hit delete and the file is gone. The only way to delete one of those minus signs is to do 4 stars to replace each minus sign. Okay, so that is a lot of stars. That's a lot of doing something correctly to replace the bad version. And if you did it wrong a whole bunch of times in the beginning, you have a lot of extra work cut out for you in your future. Or if you were doing it correctly and then I turned around and you started doing it sloppy on purpose, now you're giving yourself minus signs. You're going to have to do it correctly 4 times every incorrect one to get rid of that minus sign. And the kids don't like minus signs. They love stars. They hate minus signs. And so they want stars and they think that it's a really, really big deal. And so they'll do the step. And I'll say, okay, that was pretty good, but you know, your ensemble has to land in 1st position, not in 6th position. So do it again a couple more times and land in 1st. And they'll do it again, and they'll do it again, and they'll do it again, and say, Miss Haley, I landed in 1st. Was that a star or a minus sign? Well, that was a star. That was really good. And they get all excited about it. I'm not giving them anything, but I'm also not telling them to do 20,000 ensembles because they're doing it correctly on purpose the first time. And so this understanding of muscle memory for them is really encouraging because they want to do it correctly. They want to practice it correctly and not do it wrong on purpose. We are going to move on to Miss Maria Lyons. She is super cool. She is part of the, what is the name of your public speaking group, Maria?
Maria Lyons Productions.
Yes. And so she's going to be talking to us about how to talk to dance parents without being a jerk.
Hi, Haley. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Great. All right. Well, what I'll do is just get started. And there are some downloads that you can get into, but for the most part, I'll just go ahead and get started. Give me 1 minute to get everything pulled up on my screen. All right, well, here we go. So thanks for inviting me on the call today. And I've been in this industry teaching since I was 19 years old when I opened my first dance studio when I was actually 19 years old, but that was in 1997. So I've been, I've been responsible for opening 5 other dance and theater companies since I first opened. And now I'm a motivational speaker with my own television show that will be on Roku soon on the Entrepreneur channel. But anyway, I sold my studios this past year just to focus more on my public speaking and training that I do. But I really love the dance industry, and I love talking about some of the things that I've learned to overcome to have a successful dance studio. And I actually had to learn a lot very quickly about dealing with parents and students when I first opened the doors in 1997. Because let's face it, when we first go into opening a dance studio, one of the reasons that we choose to do that is because, you know, we love to teach dance. We love our craft, and we want to share that with the students in our communities and surrounding communities. So that's one of the reasons that we choose to go into this business. So a lot of the times, you know, we jump in blind, which of course was the case for me at the age of 19. But don't get me wrong, you know, I did know a lot about business going into my studio. And let me tell you how I knew about business. It was because my grandfather had owned 3 businesses that I grew up in. So he had a restaurant, he had a gas station, and he had a motel. So I grew up helping my grandfather run those businesses. So I knew a little bit about business and dealing with people. So I knew a lot about business. However, I didn't really know that much about communication and building relationships. So I was completely blind on those 2 subjects. And I'm not going to talk about business today. I'm actually going to talk about dealing with parents and building those relationships and learning how to communicate with parents without being a jerk. You know, there are times when situations arise and our first response can come come at a knee-jerk response. And I want to talk about, just for a moment, let's see. I just want to say that I love this topic because, you know, at its core, you know, not being a jerk, at the core of not being a jerk is it's about relationships and it's about communication. And these are my two favorite topics to train and speak on when I attend the different conventions that I work with. But another one of my favorite topics is personal growth, which I'm going to touch on just a little bit before we get into relationships and communications, because I think that as a personal growth motivational speaker and coach, which is what my niche actually is, I travel all over the world now teaching on the personal growth topic. I work with many celebrities and high-profile organizations on this personal growth topic. And what I have found is that each one of us, myself included, should invest at least 1 hour a day into developing something about ourselves, whether it's a new hobby. I usually like to take things from my business, things that I'm learning through my business, and spend at least 1 hour a day learning how to do just that. So personally developing myself to make myself better at what I do. So it's real important to invest in those new skills to help you increase your passions and to increase your business knowledge as well. So personal growth is about investing time into yourself to learn something new each and every day. Now, I have a saying that I always tell people, and it goes like this. And this goes for anyone in any industry. But in the dance studio industry especially, is you have to stay green and growing, because when you ripen, you rot. So get out there to conventions, get out there, find out what's new going on in the industry and incorporate that into your dance studios. Because if you're not doing those things and you're not learning the new teaching techniques or the new trainings, because technology is out there, Google's out there, people are going to go to where the new happening things are going on. So find books, find mentors, find seminars and conventions and calls like this one that help you stay motivated and moving forward. So personal growth is your number one thing that you can do for yourself, your business, and the people around you. Now, let's get back to what my talk is really about, which is relationships and communication. So one of the things that, let's see, let me go down just a little bit. Okay, so these principles that I'm actually going to talk about today are actually from one of my friend and mentor's books, John C. Maxwell. The first book is called Relationships 101, and Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. So those are the two books that I'm going to be talking from, that these philosophies and these principles come from. So why are relationships important to your success in your dance studio business? Let's look at that first. Well, until your people skills are strong, your influence will be weak. Only very tiny visions can be accomplished alone. So to achieve anything worthwhile involves working with a team of people, your staff, the parents, the students. So think about that. So to multiply your influence, you must learn to connect with others in a mutually productive way to have a successful studio, a successful business, and just successful relationships in general. You've got to connect with people. So what is it that you need to know about others? Well, if you can learn to understand people, how they think, what inspires them, how they're likely to act in a given situation, then you can learn to motivate and influence them. You see, everybody wants to be somebody special and everybody needs encouragement. So by shedding your self-importance and learning to listen to others, you can decipher their dreams and find ways to add value to them. So when you help one person, you're actually impacting several others. So the nature of influence is to multiply What you give to one individual, which overflows into the lives of everyone they interact with. So you see, in the dance business, that is what you are doing. You are inspiring students and parents and your staff to dream, to challenge themselves to be better than they were yesterday.
We lost Maria. That's okay. I'm going to re-invite her. And we'll see. She's up in the mountains, so it's possible her internet has gone out. Let's see here. And Maria also is going to have a special course that all of you guys can purchase if you like. It is also called Talking to Dance Parents Without Being a Jerk. And the normal price of that online course is $150. She's giving us a coupon to use. You can get the course for $50. I'm going to post the link as soon as it's live. It's going to be live available after the call. Let's see if I can get her back online. All right. Well, in the meantime, I would love to show you another one of my favorite drawings to share with kids. And, oh, she's back.
Where did you drop her at?
I don't know what happened. Okay, you're back now.
Well, I'm actually at the library, so I have great internet connection.
All right, floor is yours.
Okay, but what was the last thing I said?
I don't know. I'm sorry. You were talking about connecting, building relationships.
How can you be sure you're connecting with people? You want me to start there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll start. Okay, so starting again. How can you be sure that you are connecting with people? You see, all great communicators recognize the need to touch people's hearts before asking for a hand. You can't motivate people to act unless you first move them with emotion. You see, the heart comes before the head. When you connect with others, you engender loyalty, which is bringing about a strong sense of togetherness between parents, staff, and students. So it's important to learn to become a better listener. You see, because people hate feeling anonymous or ignored. They have an innate desire to be heard. So by becoming a good listener, you are able to develop strong, deeper relationships because you are meeting a basic need. So by listening attentively, you show that you value and respect the people. So in order to listen, you have to make yourself available for conversations. You have to be present in your business. And by doing this, you are building trust with others. Now, what I mean by being present in your business is you have to be there. When I had my studios, I had 3 of them at one time functioning at the same time. And it was really hard because I also had 3 kids too. And so I would be at one studio, I would have staff members at another studio, and then I would be running between 2 different ones because they were in the same town. And what I found myself doing was not being present at one of my bigger studios, which was our main studio. And that really hurt the relationships that I needed to be building in those studios that I was relying on the staff members to do. So you really have to make sure that you're not spreading yourself out too thin. You have to make sure that you're present in your business, you're engaged, you're speaking to people, you're asking questions, you're making yourself available so that you can build the trust that you need to, because relationships are really, really important in this business. So to build trust with others, you also have to lead a life of character. Now, let me speak on character for a minute, because your character speaks louder than words, which is instructing others about who you truly are. So when people see that we have an impeccable character, they become willing to rely on us in important situations. You see, you're building a brand at your studio, and that brand is yourself. So really get clear on your character and who you are, and put that into practice at your studio. You will need a nice, clean image if you're going to be working with people's children. You see, you have to create a safe environment in this industry no matter what. I like the Boy Scout law for building character. My son is a Boy Scout, and he had to learn this for his character development. So looking over it, I decided to adopt it for myself. Since I was having to teach it to my son, it only made sense that I also learned it as well. And this is what the Boy Scout law is. And some of you who have scouts, you probably know this. So it says that a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. So I invite you to Google the Boy Scout law if you didn't get that, and work it into your own character development, because it is important to really work on your character and get clear on who you are. So what is your most important relationship? Okay, this one is a hard one. I'm just going to ask that one more time. What do you think in the studio business, what is your most important relationship that you're going to encounter? You see, many studio owners, directors, staff, teachers, they sacrifice their marriages and families in pursuit of success, only to find that professional accomplishment is not worth the expense of private, personal life heartaches. So relationship with your loved ones cannot be taken for granted. Like any relationship, they need investment of time and energy. People with contented family lives are intentional about showing appreciation to those they love, and are committed to fighting for that relationship no matter what. So I'm asking you to do a self-check and to ask yourself, do you have a healthy balance between your work life and your family life? You see, because sometimes work demands extra time and effort, but too much overtime can be hazardous to your home life. So learn to say no at work and take time for yourself and your family. Hire extra staff or recruit volunteers to take some of your workloads so you can have time with your family. You see, one of my best friends who has a huge studio of about 800 students or more, she doesn't do classes on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, her personally. But on competition season, I'm sure she has about 6 weekends out of the year that she does not dedicate to family, but instead, goes on the road with her team. But the rest of the time, she is fully present at her business on those 4 days. And then on the weekend, you can't find her because she's with her family. You see, in this business, in the studio business, you can make a lot of money. You can make professional income in the dance studio business, or you can make hobby income. You see, the choice is yours, professional income or hobby income. And it's going to take dedicating some professional hours to it if you want professional income, or hobby income if you want some hobby hours. So you've got to decide which way you're going to do this business when you do it. My friend does it very professionally for 4 days. The rest of the time, she has staff members that may be teaching classes on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But for the most part, for her personally, she's not there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Those are dedicated to her family. Now let me talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's communication. So we're going to move into the communication end of this training, and I kind of broke it up into 2 sections so you would understand a little bit about building relationships and how important those are. Now we're going to get into communication. So in communication, it's not just about spouting knowledge at people and just throwing it at them and hoping, you know, something sticks. It's about really connecting with people and learning how to connect so that you can increase your influence with the people that you're working with and the people that you're serving. So when your ability to connect increases with your parents, students, and staff, then your influence will also increase in every situation that you're going to face. So connecting is the ability to identify with people and relate to them in such a way that it increases our influence with them. You see, owning a dance studio is about leadership. Okay, you are a leader in that studio. You're a director. You're the owner. And so that is your influence. And leadership, therefore, equals influence. So here's a list of eight important keys to being a successful communicator. Number 1 is extra effort. It's important to go the extra mile in your business, so put forth the extra effort. Number 2 is unsolicited appreciation. So it's extremely important to say positive things in all your communications. Show unsolicited appreciation to your parents, your students, and staff. And it's amazing what a simple thank you, I appreciate you can do for your business. You know, I spent some time with Dan Cathy. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he's the owner, president, and CEO of Chick-fil-A. And I learned one of the biggest secrets behind Chick-fil-A success, and it's service to others with a cheerful heart. Have you ever noticed that when you go into a Chick-fil-A, the staff says, "It's my pleasure," instead of "You're welcome"? I have recently added that phrase into my life, and it does make a world of difference to people. So my advice to all of you on this call is to make an effort to say, "It's my pleasure," and watch how people light up. Number 3 is unguarded openness. You have to have unguarded openness to demonstrate trust with everyone in your studio. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Hold your students, staff, and parents to the highest of standards of open communication. No talking about each other, no gossiping, and no backbiting is allowed. Nip that in the butt as soon as you hear it and sense it. Number 4, increased communication. Now, you must have increased communication so that you can express yourself more readily to your staff, your students, and parents. So make yourself available. Send emails, be active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Let parents, students, and staff see what you are doing. And I'm not talking about personal life here. I'm talking about your business life. Okay, so keep your business accounts separate from your personal accounts. These business accounts too, with your staff members, what you might want to do is implement what I like to call a first rule of contact rule with your staff members. That way students have access to contact teachers one way. So instead of them being connected on Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these other social media accounts, texting, phone calls. You might want to have your staff members sign contracts that there's one rule, first rule of contact, that they can follow them on Facebook, or they can follow them on Instagram, but they can't do Facebook. So you'll want to implement that right out of the gate. Otherwise, these kids are attached to your people all over the place. And I have a story that goes along with this, and I have a reason that we did this in our studio a few years ago. So if you let your students follow your personal accounts on Facebook, then don't let them follow your other personal accounts. You may want to consider this with your staff as well, because you can control what you as a director and as a person of character post, but you can't always control what your staff may post. You see, one of my studios was a Christian organization where we prided ourselves on good morals with staff, music, costuming, and it was a safe place for children. Well, I hired a gymnastics teacher that was young. She was in her early 20s, and I thought a great fit for our studio. I became friends with her on Facebook, and I'd actually checked her profile out before hiring her, and everything had seemed okay. Nothing too big to worry about. Well, fast forward to a few years ago to Mr. Christian Grey. I'm not sure some of you know that name, and if you don't, let me just enlighten you. He's the main character from the movie 50 Shades of Grey, and that borderlines, in my book, a XXX rating with whips and chains and the whole 9 yards. Now, I'm not getting into anything on whether you saw the movie or not and whether it's bad or good, but I'm sure you heard the mixed media on the topic. Well, anyway, this new teacher I had just hired posted on her Facebook site where most of my impressionable 10 to 18-year-old young girls were following her. She posted, "See you in 30 minutes, Mr. Grey," with the movie trailer. Now, I know those kids probably know about sex and probably have seen more than I'd like to admit, but as the director of a Christian dance ministry, I was a little mortified. Now, truth be told, I saw the same movie, but I didn't broadcast it because I have a lot of children following me. And I'm one of the people that comes from the belief that we shouldn't rob children of their innocence by broadcasting such a perverted, unrealistic view on sex. So have a business account that students and parents can be part of, but maybe add in your contract a clause about teachers not accepting students and parents on social medias. I did have a mess on my hands from a few parents who saw that post and trailer. So let's go back to the key points. We're at number 5. You want to create an enjoyable experience at your studio. You have to create an enjoyable experience. And to do that, you have to really feel good about what you're teaching and what you're doing. I always had problems, it seemed, around recital time. Kids are ready to be done with school. They want to break from everything. And I find my own motivation around that time, around spring break, sinking. So find fun ways to engage your students. Have a movie night. Lock-ins are a lot of fun. Car washes. We used to have a fun picnic where the parents would bring a potluck. So you don't always have to foot the bill for these functions. You can get the parents involved to help cover the costs on some things. Number 6, emotional bondedness. If you don't already possess this, it's going to be something you'll need to develop and read about and learn emotional bondedness. Learn to display a connection on an emotional level of what you're trying to communicate. Number 7 is positive synergy. You want to learn to ooze with positive synergy in your business. So when you're at work, you want to make it known that you love, love, love what you are doing. Because if you don't love this business, it might be time to sell it and get out. The reason I say this is because people can sense if you are having fun or not, and people want to be around the fun. So make sure you absolutely love this business. And number 8 is unconditional love. This is the most important thing you can do for your business, and that's being accepting of everyone without reservations, no matter what. This is called loving everyone unconditionally. You have to love the weakest to the strongest, to the most talented to the kid that has the 2 left feet with no rhythm. So the ability to connect with others is understanding the value of people. You see, Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, observes those who build great companies understand that the ultimate throttle on growth for any great company is not markets or technology or competition or products. It is one thing above all others, and that's the ability to get and keep enough of the right people. So I'm going to begin to wrap up my end of the section by going into connecting on common ground, because this part is about relationships, about connecting, how to do that, the 8 keys. And now we're going to get into about common ground, is finding common ground with people. And I have some key points on that too. But connecting on common ground, I think, is important because it's going to help you communicate better with parents, students, and staff when things do go wrong. So I want to start by saying this, that connectors connect on common ground, and it is difficult to find common ground with others when the only person you're focused on is yourself. So I continue to work at learning how others think and perceive the world. Recently, I read a book by Terry Filber called Am I Making Myself Clear? And he says that people have different representational systems based on 5 senses that provide the preliminary basis for their thoughts and feelings. For example, if several people are walking down the beach together, their recollection of the experience would be very different based on their representational system. So one might remember how the sun felt on their skin and sand on their feet, while the other might remember the look of the water and the vivid colors of the sunset. But the third person might be able to describe the sounds of the ocean and the birds, while the other may remember the smell of the salty air and the tanning lotion of the nearby sunbathers. Because you see, each of us creates a framework for the way that we process the information. Filber goes on to say that if you learn to pinpoint how those around you experience the world and really try to experience the same world they do, you'll be amazed at how effective your communication will be. That's simply another way to look for common ground. But let's first take a moment and look at what are some of the barriers to finding common ground in our own life as well as the people we're talking to. Number 1 is the assumption gap, which simply states I already know what others know, feel, and want. So therefore, you jump to your own conclusions, or they jump to their own conclusions. So that's one of the barriers to common ground. The second one is arrogance. I don't need to know what others know, feel, or want, because I know it all and I'm the boss. Number 3 is the indifference gap, which simply states I don't care to know what others know, feel, or want. I just want to be left alone. Personally, in my book, I think the indifference gap is probably one of the worst places to be, because you don't care one way or another about anything or anyone. So to me, I think number 3 is one of the worst places to be. The other one is number 4, the control gap, which simply states I don't want others to know what I know, feel, or think. Basically, that has to do with it's hard to ask for help and to relinquish control because I can do it all by myself. How many of us in the dance industry as directors and owners find it really hard to ask for help or to assign responsibilities to other staff members for fear of it not being done the right way or it not going the way it is supposed to be planned? So we tend to overload ourselves to burnout at times. So how many of us actually have number 4, which is one of the barriers to finding common ground, is relinquishing control? So I love Jim Lundy's take on this. In his book, if you haven't read it, it's called Lead, Follower, Get Out of My Way. In it, he concludes that the response of people who work in an environment where leaders hold back from from their workers. He writes about a group that he calls the subordinate group. And this particular group says this about working for a leader who holds back. They say, "We, the uninformed, working for the inaccessible, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful." So don't let this group be talking about you as a studio director. Get out there, inform people, be accessible, learn beside your staff, your parents, and your students, and show appreciation at all times. I promise you it'll make your studio grow. So now here's a list that I want to add to help you be the best communicator that you can be, and it's how to find common ground. So now I've told you about the 4 barriers to finding common ground. Now we're going to talk about how do you find common ground in communicating. Number 1 is availability. I talked about that earlier in relationships, and that's to choose to spend time with others and the people of your studio. Number 2 is listening. You must really listen your way to common ground. Try to be proactive and less reactive. Smile and take a minute to think before you respond. I've been known to say things to people like, when people come to me with problems or situations, I've been known to say, "You know what, that's a great idea. Let me get back to you on that." Or, I've said this before too, "Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Let me do some investigation and I will get back to you." Sometimes you do have to take things at face value and do your own research. There's an old school saying that goes like this: "Believe nothing you hear and only half of what you see." So it's important to listen to people, but take it with a grain of salt and do your own research before jumping to conclusions. Number 3, questions. You must be interested enough in others to ask questions. I recommend that you ask a lot of questions. Number 4 is thoughtfulness. You must think of others and look for ways to help them. My friend who has one of the studio that I was talking about earlier, my daughter has switched studios. When I sold my studio, my daughter decided that she wanted to go dance at my friend's studio because we're moving closer to that studio, and it only made sense. So at auditions, my daughter shows up, and she's ready to do auditions. She's 15 minutes before going in with her class, and she pulls off her warm-up, and there's a hole in her leotard that she didn't see that morning. And so anyway, we're in the dressing room where all the leotards are. We're trying to find her a new leotard. About that time, my friend walks in, who is the owner of the studio, and she sees panic on my daughter's face, and she sees a potential meltdown starting to happen with my daughter, and she sees the fear in my own eyes. And so what she did was she took the situation and she took hold of it, and she was like, "You know, Emily, I will help you find a leotard. Don't worry." Because, you know, I don't know if any of you have daughters in the dance industry with you, but sometimes it's hard to maneuver our daughters because we know nothing of dance and we don't know how to pick a leotard, even though we've maybe been there for 35 years like myself. But anyway, so my daughter, you know, went with Miss Angie and they found a leotard and she helped her. But my friend who owned the studio could have easily just walked on through because it was her kids. You know, this was her audition for her 5 companies that she has. There's parents everywhere asking a million questions. It would have been real easy for her to just keep on walking and to completely ignored that I had any kind of problem whatsoever. But instead, she took the time to stop, to be thoughtful enough to recognize the situation, to help get it under control, and to help my daughter transition and have a smooth audition. So I'm not even sure that she realized just how thoughtful that was of her, because she does things like that all the time. And maybe you do that in your business too, because it's an autopilot thing. You're just thoughtful. So, and the reason she's able to do that is because she loves what she does, and you can feel it. So practice being thoughtful, because it will increase your pay and increase your income, increase your student base. It will pay huge dividends in the end. Number 5 is openness. You must let people into your life. Be open. Ask for help. You don't have to know it all. It's okay to be open and honest with people. If someone's kid can't dance, then tell them that it's not going to work out for them. but make recommendations for other activities like guitar lessons or piano lessons. Refer them to another dance studio. You know, I've been known to refer kids to other dance studios because they just weren't a fit for us. And parents are okay with that. You know, it's better to not have them waste money than to, you know, get to the recital and their kid is still as bad as they were as the first day they started. So sometimes we just can't work with some kids, and that's okay. Just recognize it early and refer them out. Likability is number 6. You must truly care about people. Learn to be likable. Be friendly, charismatic, and energetic. Ask people how they are doing and stop to listen. Remember people's names and jot them down. Jot down little things about people so you can remember them. People love to talk about themselves, so get them talking. Let's see. Roger, who was Roger Alias, a former communication consultant to presidents, believes that the most influential factor in public speaking is likability. He says that if people like you, they will listen to you, and if they don't, they simply won't. Now, number 7 is a hard one for all of us, especially studio directors, but it's a very important one, and that's humility. Humility is number 7, and you must think of yourself less so you can think of others more. Now, let me just stop right there and say a journalist and editor, Alan Ross, asserted that humility means knowing and using your strengths for the benefit of others on behalf of a higher purpose. The humble leader is not weak, but strong, is not occupied with self, but with how to best use his or her strengths for the good of others. A humble leader does not think less of himself, but chooses to consider the needs of others in a fulfilling, worthy cause. You see, I love to be in the presence of a humble leader because they bring out the very best in me. Their focus is on my purpose, my contributions, and my ability to accomplish all the goals that I've set out to accomplish. So let me take a moment and touch on what humility is. It's number 1, a capacity for self-criticism, which number 2 is allowing others to shine. And the last one, adaptability, is number 8. You must move from your world to theirs. You must adapt to what their view looks like if you don't want to come off sounding like a jerk and losing the people who pay you good money. So to sum up connections on common grounds, these are some questions that you can ask yourself, and I know these are in the download that Haley put up for you, but one of them is, when you're doing common ground, is you need to ask yourself, do I feel what you feel? Before asking the question or asserting, do you feel what I feel? Ask, do I see what you see? Before asking, do you see what I see? And do I know what you know? Before asking, do you know what I know? And then, do I know what you want? Before asking, do you know what I want? So the key concepts is to know the reason you and your listeners want to communicate and build a bridge between them. So to be the best studio owner you can be, it's going to take building those relationships with the parents, students, and staff, as well as being a good listener and learning to communicate and really connect with each individual that you come in contact with. So learn to show love and understanding in all that you do, because it's the best way to not being a jerk when it comes to dealing with the parents. So thanks for inviting me on the call today. It's been fun.
Yay, thank you so much, Maria.
You're welcome.
I would love to ask you a couple quick questions just out of curiosity. What, as far as, let's say you're in a situation where you have a parent who maybe is not communicating with you effectively, and you're trying to communicate with them, but you guys are just not on the same page, what would you recommend as far as a really good way to get across to them what you're trying to say without sounding like a jerk?
One of the things that I always do, because you do come across a lot of different personalities in this field, So you really have to assess the situation, because not everybody understands at your level. So you really have to ask questions to get the whole information from the individual that you're trying to do. Like, I mean, give me a situation and I'll try to be more specific.
So let's say you have a kid who you didn't even notice that you did this, but and it's 2 weeks before recital, and there is a kid who the mom comes to you and says, my daughter has been in the back row in the corner of the recital dance for 3 years in a row. What's going on?
Okay, well, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I got asked that one too. I'm kind of passing it along to you.
Well, okay, what I would do is just say, I'm sorry that she has been overlooked, but, you know, we do try to showcase each kid's at their own level and where they are in the dance and stuff. And so you can say, even though that she is starting off there, the choreography brings her to the front at certain times and stuff. And so it really has to do, I mean, in my own personal experience, I usually do choreography based on height. So the taller kids usually do end up in the back, where the shorter kids end up in the front. But then we also will alternate and filter different kids through at different parts of the choreography, so that everybody is showcased at one time or another. But for the most part, you know, some kids too are also comfortable dancing back in that position, you know. And if it was an issue, that's where you should say, well, you know, if it was an issue for Mary, you know, I would have liked her to have come and told me that, you know, she didn't want to dance there. She would have liked to have been featured a little bit more in the dance. There's not really anything we can do to it right now. But if you don't mind, maybe, you know, maybe we can fix that for next year, you know. And if she's not that strong of a dancer, recommend private lessons so that she can be showcased a little bit more in the choreography. But I usually make mental notes, or I actually have a handbook when I'm doing choreography and stuff, of where everybody is, where the placement is, and then who's had what when they're filtering through doing different things. Because sometimes, I mean, you do have kids who have that explosive personality, and they're in each other's face, and they're in your face, and they're always there. But then you have the shy kids who kind of stand in the back and kind of do get forgotten, you know. And sometimes you do forget to showcase them. So, but if you're writing it down, it kind of helps you know who's got what.
So as far as communicating that to a family, like in a nice way, you know, something along the lines of, you know, understanding where they're coming from, and make sure that you say, you know, I understand how you're feeling right now. And then just being, you know, kind to them and sharing with them your side of the story, so to speak, I guess is kind of what you're saying.
Well, yeah, it's called feel, felt, found. You know, I hear what you're saying. You know, I hate that you feel that way. So you feel, that's how I see how you feel. Feel, felt, found. Sorry you felt that way. Here's what I found. So then you can say, you know, I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry that I overlooked her. Take full responsibility, because if you don't take responsibility, now you're in trouble. Just say, you know, I'm sorry, I just overlooked her. You know, I'm sorry that she feels this way, but here's what I found. Maybe at the end we can showcase her through or something, or, you know, because you've got to make it right somehow. And sometimes you can't. You know, sometimes it's something that you're going to have to make right next year, because you can't really adjust choreography. So I don't know. You just have to do feel, felt, found on that one. Here's what I found. We need to do private lessons to get her showcased next year.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I know that, you know, I don't have a ton of customer service experience, but when, you know, I did work in a retail and in food industry for a while. And every once in a while, you do have somebody kind of, they just have that sort of negative energy about them, and they might be really frustrated, or I've had customers blow up in my face before. Luckily, I've never had a dance parent blow up at me. I work in an amazing studio where I can say, you can go talk to Chasta about that, and I can just pass it on and go into the studio and shut the door, and I don't have to deal with it. And I think when I was working for you too, it was kind of the same thing. I could just kind of hand that over to you and not have to deal with it. But yeah, there's definitely an art to talking to people who feel like they've been wronged, who feel like you've done bad by them. and it takes a lot of practice. What would you recommend people do as far as getting better at that?
Well, one of the things is that I implemented to a lot of people and that I coach on, and I've implemented into people, is you can't take anything personal in this industry because it's really not about you. A lot of the times when people blow up at you or they're mad at you, if you get down to the root cause of why someone's mad, there's other reasons behind that blowing up at you, because you can't take it personal because it's not about you. And that's the first thing you have to remember. But a lot of times that negativity, if you run into it in your studio, you just have to, a lot of the times, take the heat. And you just smile and you just say, what do you recommend? How do you recommend we handle this? And you don't ask why questions, and you never ask how, because that makes people upset. That just infuriates them. Well, why do you feel this way? Don't ask those questions. Just say things like, if someone's really upset at you, you just say, you know what, I'm glad that you brought that to my attention. I had no clue that was going on. What is some of the recommendations that you recommend that we proceed with this? And you let them tell you. Now, most of the time you won't agree with it, and that's okay. That's where you just smile and you say, you know what, those are some great ideas. Let me consider them, and let's talk about this, tomorrow at noon, or let's have a conference when I'm not getting ready to go on the dance floor. And what that does is it takes them away from you, it takes them away from the situation. They sleep on it, and when they come back, they're a lot more focused and calmed down. And so are you. You're also a little more prepared too, because now you know what they're mad about, and you have time to think and prepare your argument as well. So that's the way I usually had handled any irate parent. I know I had one parent who was not getting my emails. I had no clue. So when it came to recital time, she had no clue the recital was in 2 weeks. So she came to me, and she was actually a friend, and she's like, I don't think it's, my child's responsibility to get the printed papers to me. I can't believe, you weren't sending them on email. I mean, she just laid into me, and I was like, wow, where did this come from? And so it comes to find out, my email was going into her junk folder, and her daughter was not giving her the printed email. So I just kind of took the heat of it all and was like, you know what, I'm sorry you didn't get the email. That was my fault. I should have made sure, she should have made sure it wasn't going into her junk folder, first of all, right? But instead I was like, can you check at the front desk, make sure you have your email and your stuff so it's not going into spam. But I took the heat. I was like, sorry for that. I'll make sure that I personally hand you the papers. But even though that didn't happen, but that was one incident where, I had to remove her from the studio to outside and talk to her. Okay. And it was all over the recital being in 2 weeks, and she had no clue. But I mean, we'd been talking about the recital for, months. How do you not know this?
I think we all asked that question at one point. And so now you've put together like an online course. Is that correct?
I have, yes.
Tell us about that just a little bit.
It's an online course of what I just trained on, which is relationships, communication. And on the online course, it's at Udemy, Udemy, which I think you have that. You can give them that email address and how to spell it. It's under, let's see, the name of it is How to Talk to Parents Without Sounding Like a Jerk. That's the name of the training. And it's a $150 course, but because you guys are on this call, it's a $50 course if you put in the passcode Not a Jerk 2017, and that'll reduce your price down to $50. But that course won't be live until the end of this call later on today. So it's not live yet. And what that course is, it is my production company has filmed me training on each one of these sections, but it's been taken into sections of 3 to 2 minute clips. And at the end of those 3 and 2 minute clips, there's actually questions that are asked of you, which is more specific. There's a few more stories that were incorporated that we didn't have time to go into. But the Udemy course, once you sign up to take the Udemy course, the course is yours for as long as you need it. And there'll be a few downloads there too for you to go to learn more about relationships, communication, and then of course there's a few coaching questions there too. You can have access to me to ask any questions as well through that course.
That's awesome. And so what I'll do as soon as it's live is I will post that on the Beyond the Bar Facebook page so that people can get a hold of it. And yeah, make sure that everybody has access to that. So yes, thank you so much, Maria, for being here. I love it. I love it. I love it. What was the you had a specific book that you referenced a couple times that you quoted the author, Filber.
Filber, let's see. I forgot his name myself. The name of the book is, that one is a really good book. Hold on, let me find his name. I always want to call him Alan, but his name's not Alan.
Why do our brains do that?
I don't know.
It doesn't. It really doesn't even start with a J at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jack Lundy, which is, Jim Lundy is the one lead follower, Get Out of My Way. That book is a really great one, Jim Lundy. And Lundy is spelled Lundy. And then the other book was by, that was the one about the experiences. Am I making myself clear? Is Terry Filber.
Okay, Terry Filber.
Felber.
Awesome.
And that one is Am I Making Myself Clear? Both of those are great.
Great. All
But
right.
you'll have to follow me on my Lion's Den TV show too to see the personal development videos. The Lion's Den with Maria Lyons.
Yes. Maria is so much fun, and there's an awesome, hilarious video clip that's online right now as well, where she features her evil twin.
Eve.
Yes, she is really something. And so, yeah, thank you again, Maria, for being a part of this. And yeah, I encourage everybody to follow her on social media. She's always posting really inspiring, great things. You've got a very active Instagram, is that correct?
Yes, very active Instagram, and Facebook is the Lion's Den show right now.
Yep. So yeah, we're doing all sorts of great stuff. All right, Maria, thank you again so much for being here, and we'll see you around.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So we are actually going to hand the floor over to Chasta Hamilton. She is super cool and does so many things that I couldn't even summarize it. You own what, 2 studios and a theater? Is that right?
I don't own a theater. I just do a lot of work in theater. I do own 2 studios.
2 studios is enough
With the
for
amount of
anybody.
theater work I do, I own one.
So, but yeah, you're going to be talking about embracing change. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Hey, well, take it away.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Like Haley said, my name is Chasta Hamilton, and I am the owner of Stage Door Dance in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have 2 studio locations and serve about 600 students, and our 2017 to 18 dance season starts on Monday, so it is a very exciting and busy time. And outside of that, I do a lot of work as a director and a choreographer in the theater community. And I'm really involved with our junior league, and I go to NC State and do interviews. And we just really try to plan ourselves as a community staple. So that's a little bit about our culture. But the one thing that I've found that has kind of, pushed us forward and has made us really become the best studio that I could envision or imagine is this concept of embracing change. And I think that that's a concept that works no matter if you're in the dance field or if you're a doctor or a lawyer or if you're a stay-at-home mom or whatever career you opt to pursue, because change is truly the only thing that is really constant. And instead of resisting it, which I think is it's an easy slope to fall into, is that resistance to change versus embracing it. And I will say this is an exercise that I'm constantly working on myself too. So I'm no means the embracing change guru, but I have learned a few things along the way that I hope will help you as you launch your classes and your studios for this new season. So I wanted to sort of start this talk with a quote that is by Socrates that I found. And it is, The secret of change is to focus excuse me, let me grab my notepad so I can read it correctly. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And I think that's incredible. So whatever happened yesterday, yesteryear, just let it go and focus on that idea of elevation and manifesting what you genuinely want to happen in your life, in your classes, in your studio, and with your dancers. I used to have a blog and we did seminars called The Dance Exec, and 22 Ticks has acquired all of that content. So what Haley is doing with me on the Barre is really amazing, and having a collaborative resource is super important. So I fully support this, and I'm glad that we can come together, and hopefully you'll be able to take away a few things from our conversation today. So the first thing is about culture. And I think culture is super important in your classes, super important in your studio, and super important in your life. You know, who are you? What do you stand for? What is your brand? And I think that we have things that happen in our everyday lives that question, you know, sort of what we stand for and what we represent. And that's one of the changes and the resistance to change that we have to fight. We have to be so confident in who we are and what we are doing that we are willing to take a stand and embrace, you know, our true selves. So I want to give you an example of something that happened in our studio a few years ago. So, you know, we used to have a competitive program, and for a few years, I just thought, you know, this program is not moving in the competition industry wasn't moving in the direction that I saw as fitting for my studio. So I said, how can we offer our students an elevated educational experience that truly is positive and well-rounded and represents what I wanted Stage Door Dance to stand for? So we sort of watched the industry for 2 years. I always say that sometimes when you're making big change, slow and steady is the way to go. And I thought, I think that an intensive training program would better benefit our students, better benefit our families and our clients, and also allow us to reach the goals that we want our students to discover or succeed in. So with that technique intensive training program, we founded it on 4 principles: performance, character, technique, and community. And we've had that program going for 2 years, and it is small. It's a small population that belongs to that program, but within it, we've had students be able to pursue theater at the local level. We've had students be in national tours, and we've had students be on Broadway. We've also had students participate in extracurriculars, receive scholarships to amazing colleges and universities. You know, they're participating in companies, and they're doing really, really great things, and they're excelling in their academics. And even more importantly, they're learning how to use their art to make a bigger impact. This past year, we did a concert series called Make a Splash. In our Make a Splash initiative, we had a goal to raise $7,500 to fund a clean water well in Uganda. And the students exceeded that goal. And one of our studio's directors actually traveled to Uganda this summer to see the fruition of that work. So it was really exciting and amazing for the students to be able to see something so tangible, to see that their art can go, you know, to actually changing the world. And we're excited to see kind of where that leads this year. But I will say, when we made the decision to take this shift, there was resistance. And, you know, we did have clients leave. And one of the things that comes with change is fear. And I find that sometimes fear is what holds us back from reaching our fullest potential. So how do you overcome fear? And I don't really have the answer to that. But what I found for myself is that I try to do one thing that makes me really uncomfortable every single day. And, you know, some days it can just be maybe having a conversation that you were a little nervous about having, or picking up a phone when you don't know what's on the other end, going into an environment that maybe you're not used to. You know, just doing those little tiny nuggets that continue to push you forward. And the more that you are facing that level of discomfort, the more that you grow. And I think that's been really helpful as well. So that was a great example of kind of figuring out who we stand for. And from that moment when we declared this is who we are and this is what we do, the rest of our culture has completely fallen into place. And I'm finding that what we have created is becoming this very synergistic, you know, great feeling culture and environment where staff, students, families, parents, office, everyone is just on the same page and working towards the same goal. And that's something that feels really, really amazing. And I think that's a nugget that you can take and implant into your classes and into your studio for the upcoming season. And another thing with change is just being open to evolution, right? So it would be easy to become complacent and say, okay, well, this has worked year after year after year. Let's just keep going like this. But unfortunately, that's probably not going to push you towards your ultimate level of growth. So then you have to ask yourself, what can I do to maybe shake things up a bit? How can I change? How can I tweak this? Or how can I improve upon what I'm already doing so that I can continue to evolve, so that as a teacher, as a choreographer, or, you know, as a studio, because how often do we get in to our styles, you know, and we become comfortable. So, you know, whether it's picking a different type of music or teaching a class outside of your comfort zone, or shaking things up a bit, you know, throwing some different lobby decor in, how are you constantly evolving and changing? So I do think that's really important, because I think if we are pushing change and embracing it, then we're not going to have that level of resistance or the discontent when change happens. Another point that I thought about is just the importance of being adaptable and resilient and quick thinking, because we all know when you're in a classroom, you know, being fast on your feet is super important. Being able to teach to a variety of educational styles and abilities, and just being hyper aware of how students learn, and being aware of your teaching methods and how it is being conveyed to the students. Because sometimes we have the ways that we teach, but maybe that's not resonating to certain students in a particular class. So we have to be adaptable and tweak that. And the same goes for lesson plans. You know, just having that flexibility and different music options and different ideas or exercises or games so that you can keep everyone engaged and happy. And that's the most important thing, is that I want students to walk away from the dance studio feeling like they've been impacted in a positive way. Like, we really want to empower them and inspire them in their art to walk out the door and appreciate the performing arts and be a better person because of it. An important part of our culture, which has evolved over time as well. And another thing is just working with crisis, right? We all have days where we feel like we are doggy paddling and just barely staying afloat. And that's okay. And I think that the more that we can recognize and be self-aware and delegate, I know, like, I have learned a lot, particularly in the past few months, about delegation and passing over tasks and empowering people so that they can also elevate and reach their fullest potential. You know, you may have teen students that are ready for a little more leadership, or staff that are eager and willing to do what they specialize in and what they do well. And I think the more of a team mentality that you can have, the better everyone will be as a collective, because then everyone is contributing. Everyone is finding a level of ownership within where they're working and what they're doing. And I think that's a really powerful and exciting thing as far as taking everything to a higher level. And then there are tougher choices to make, like expanding, or do you add classes? Do you sign another 10-year lease? You know, and those bigger picture questions. And I think that when you're dealing with long range planning, which I think it is super important to consider. I know in college, the scholarship program that I was a part of had a plan of professional development. And every year we would have to say, in 5 years, I see myself doing this. In 10 years, I see myself doing this. And I think even as adults in our professional careers, it's important to kind of think, well, what direction do I see myself going? Where will I see myself in this many years or that many years? And how am I supporting myself in my desire to get there? And individually and professionally, and even in terms of the business, I think that's a really good thing and an exercise to consider. And I think with that level of focus, we strengthen ourselves, because then we have a plan and we have a roadmap laid out so that we can achieve it. So I think the long range planning is super important in attacking change. And the other important thing to remember is that no matter how much you plan or how organized you are, there are still going to be instances of change that you least expect. And when those happen, I think it's important that you rationally take time to consider what's happening and evaluate the situation and strategize and then respond. I think knee-jerk reactions can be detrimental in situations of intense change. So I think that time is a really good thing to take and to use, whether you're dealing with a conflict at the studio, which we all encounter, or whether you're dealing with, maybe it's a Google review online or something in your personal life, whatever the situation may be. I think that sort of taking the time to think it through is critical. And then another thing that I truly believe in with change is never compromising your standards for excellence. I've always believed that there's an Aristotle quote, and I believe it's something about excellence. It's not a habit, or excellence is a habit. I can't think of the words exactly, but it's Aristotle. If you type in an Aristotle excellence quote, it'll come up hands down. I used to look at it every single day of elementary school. And I remember that quote, and what it means is that everything you do, you're doing at a heightened level of excellence. Like, you're not working for mediocrity. You're not working to just get by. You're working to the highest possible standard. And I believe when you can get an entire team collectively doing that, then you really are on a path of great achievement. And I think if you ever discover that you're in a situation where maybe everyone isn't working towards a standard of excellence, then you have to be okay walking away from it. And that's happened too. And sometimes it's tough to say, I'm sorry, but this doesn't work. This isn't in line with the culture that I'm a part of, or that I'm creating, or my brand. And sometimes stepping away from something can be hard, because a lot of times that's the unpopular choice or the unpopular path to take. But you're standing for something, and you're so confident in what you believe in. And that in itself is incredibly empowering. And I think that's super important to keep in mind too. What you stand for, being very particular about what and who you choose to align yourself with, and making sure that all of your projects and activities and presentations are in alignment with what you are working to create. And that is just a little bit of an overview about embracing change. Haley, is there anything that we want to do interactive, or I have some exercises or questions we could go through?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you want to do for the next step?
I would love that if you have some questions that you wanted to go through.
Yeah. Do I need to wait till it's back on me, or am I good? Am I on right now?
No, you're on. But mine is coming back through your computer, and then back onto the stream again. So it's a little odd. So I don't know why it's doing that. That's better. Okay. Maybe we just needed to have a little bit better internet connection there. But okay. So what you were talking about the change with the intensive training program. And I remember when we did away with that program, and we did lose a lot of people on that team. How can you tell about the the change in atmosphere in the studio that happened when you did that? Yeah, I'm on now, so I'm good for talk. Okay. There was a huge energy shift, and I think that that's something that's really, when I was talking about figuring out your ideology, that's part of it, right? Is saying, this is what I'm creating, and if what I'm creating doesn't work for what you want to create, then we have a peaceful separation of ways. And that's the beauty of it. It's when we changed, I sat every family down that was a part of our former competitive program as it was evolving into intensive training. And I said, this is the direction we're taking, and we completely understand if that doesn't work for you. And 10 or so students opted to find a new path, and that's okay. And, we all wish them well. In fact, I just saw one of the students at Staples this afternoon, and it was just delightful to see her. But the thing that you have to know is that you're making a decision that's in the better interest of this overall picture that you're creating. And the following year, after the shift in the program, we actually saw a 25% increase in enrollment. And I think that, when you're living, and working for this purpose that is very meaningful and in line with your objectives, people can feel that and they can see that, and it excites your staff and your students. And any level of negativity just, isn't tolerated anymore, because there's just no time for negativity. And it's not, this holier than thou attitude coming from the studio, but it's just like, if what we offer isn't the best fit for you, then there are other
places that do offer that. And I remember early in the studio days, I had a wonderful friend. His name is Mike Cedar, and he has his own blog series called The Legacy of You, which I highly encourage you to check out. It's amazing and just really good life questions, life wisdom, and just good nuggets for living to your fullest purpose and finding your passion. And he said, you know, if you were to take your studio and line it up in a row of houses with all the other dance studios in the area, what would set your school apart? I think that's a really good exercise that we all do, because obviously, you know, you don't want to look like every other dance school in the area. You want to offer what your specialty is, whether you're a teacher or an owner. Like, what do you do that makes you uniquely special, that's going to be a draw into your classes or your business, and that will excite people and make them say, oh, well, that's, you know, the difference. So for my studio, that would be the stage door dance difference. But what is, you know, your studio or your class's difference?
So creating a very specific and concrete brand, and then pushing that brand so that everybody can be very clear on it, is going to attract the right kind of people to your studio. And then I feel like you'll have fewer problems with people, you know, coming in and not having the same expectations as you do, and then they're, you know, not really the right fit. You know, making that brand clear and putting it up front is going to attract the right kind of people to you.
Exactly. And branding is everything. I mean, you know, it's from your online presence to the ambiance when someone walks into the studio space, to how the studios look, to the cleanliness of the studio, to the staff understanding the brand, to the students understanding the brand, to the dress code, to the curriculum, to the recitals, to the communication and follow-up. It is any type of interaction that could have to do with a class or a studio or a space is fully representative of the brand. And defining the brand and maintaining the brand, it is a lot of work. But I think once you sort of know that purpose, then it all just kind of falls into place.
That's awesome. And I know one thing that really helps us as teachers is near the beginning of the year, we usually all get together and you go through kind of our goals for the year. You know, let's just remember why we're doing this. Let's just remember who we are and why we're here. And even though all of us as dance teachers, we already know, you know, our goals for our students, we know kind of the culture of stage door dance, but you having a designated time for us to sit down and rethink about that is a really great way to get staff to just all shoot for the same thing. Because, you know, we've got, what, 12 teachers working at stage doors?
Staff of 15, yeah.
15 now. And so, you know, that's a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different experiences. And a lot of us are teaching the same kids. So they'll have me for ballet and this person for jazz and this person for tap, someone else from hip hop, and you for acro. It's just like there's a bunch of different people affecting their lives. And so if we're all coming from the same perspective, then that's going to give the child a very well-rounded and concrete and specific kind of experience of the studio, I think.
Exactly. Like, you want, when someone leaves a studio, they need to have the stage door dance experience from start to finish. And that's another thing that, you know, in a lot of the seminars I've worked on that we've discussed is kind of, you know, a 3-act system where you have Act 1, which is before they ever even enter a dance classroom. So that would be the information they gain on the website, their experience with the front desk, and the ease of enrollment and the way information is communicated, to where you go to Act 2, which is actually their in-classroom experience, which is where they have their interaction with the teacher and the experience of learning dance, to the Act 3 experience, which maybe is like a year-end performance or season follow-up or summer session or re-engagement into the following season. But it's about so much more than, like, yes, those moments in the classroom are so critical, but how can we all work together to make sure that even those moments in the hall, or, you know, bathroom cleanliness, or the corners not being dusty or cobweb laden. I mean, it's just the tiniest details, or making sure the signs aren't crooked, that everything is super straight and in line. Those little things they're part of the brand, and they're part of just knowing and confidently being who you are.
That's awesome. And I loved what you said about adapting and allowing change to happen. And sometimes you're not 100% okay with it, and there's a lot of resistance there. It reminded me of when I was in college, I took a class that was adapted PE for the physically and mentally handicapped. And it was probably the best class I ever took in college. It was a condensed summer class. It was literally 12 days long, and we covered an entire semester's worth of work in 12 days. Each class was like 4.5 hours long. It was really intense. But the one thing that he said every single day when we walked into the classroom, adapted teaching is just good teaching. Because as teachers, it's our job to adapt our lesson plans constantly to teach the kids that we have in that room. It's a totally different experience depending on, like, one kid could be gone and somebody else could be in, or your problem kid could be gone that day and your class is just completely different. As teachers, we have to embrace adaptation, and we have to be flexible and versatile, and go into teaching knowing that, okay, lesson planning is great, but half of this I'm probably going to be making up off the top of my head anyway, because I don't know what's going to happen today, and just being able to do that and then being okay with it is the big thing. Like, if I spent, 4 hours putting together this awesome ballet bar, and then I have, like the 3 lowest level students and none of the advanced students show up, I'm going to have to adapt my lesson plan a little bit, and I have to be okay with that,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing with adaptability and resilience is just understanding, and this goes back to like dealing with conflict, that perceived judgment usually has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the source of the conflict. So just being able to like confidently embrace that if you are going through a change or a transition and, people question it, because change makes people really uncomfortable. Like, people don't like it. And, being confident about the change, being steadfast in your leadership, whether this is, maybe a class changes instructors, or you have a leadership change, or anything along those lines, or a program change, it's all about confidence and presentation, and not allowing stress or emotions to get the best of you in those situations, and just being able to stay steadfast, whether you have to take some time to focus, or I love reading quotes, whatever makes you feel better and more empowered. And I think that's super important as you guide yourself through moments of change and transition.
That's awesome. So how do you think, so let's say when somebody first is realizing that they need to change something, that there's a problem and they need to change it, and what should be their first go-to? I mean, I know it's a very broad question, but like, let's
so the first thing is when the red flag comes up and you're like, whoa, like, I should start thinking about some change. The first thing is, ask yourself if it's detrimental. If it's going to be detrimental, it's something that it needs to be fast acting. If it's a situation where it's maybe non-detrimental or non-emergency, then take that time to think through and watch and observe and research and think through, well, if I do this, then this may happen, or if I do this, then that may happen. Because the thing with change is, although we can't always be prepared for it, when it does happen, the more preparation we have and the more knowledge, knowledge is power. That's what they always say, and it's so true. The more knowledge that you have about the trajectory of it is going to help you kind of confidently take that position of, hey, this is what's happening, and everything is going to be fine. Because you've already thought through it, instead of like, oh my gosh, this is happening and my heart's palpitating and I'm having anxiety. You never ever want to show that you are like shaking in your boots, even if you do go home and shed a few tears at night. Because it happens to everyone. It really does.
It does. It's true. Like, I think if I saw, if I was a studio parent and I saw my dance teacher of my kid freaking out over something, that would really make me question their professionality and their authority over the situation. And
right.
So, even if it's something as simple as, y'all need to calm down, we're going to deal with this later. Like, at least that's taking the authority and putting the power back in your hands.
Exactly. It's like recital season, which can be like a high stress time, That's a time when emotions can get carried away. But the most important thing, I think, for leadership is that you just enter calmly. Unexpected situations are going to arise, and you just handle them on a case-by-case basis. And just because maybe another person's emotions become elevated, that doesn't equate that your emotions also have to get elevated. You just stay calm, cool, and collected. You can always say, you know, I'm going to think about the situation and I'm going to get back to you if it's, you know, an intense environment. So just having the power to walk away, like that's embracing change too, or the power to say no to something if it's not a good fit. And that's something that I've really worked on this past year is, you know, being a little more selective about the projects that I take on. And I think it's however we find those little nitpicky details in our lives to adjust and adapt. And that's when we really start finding our power and our purpose.
Yeah, and that's a good point too about saying no. I know we had talked about that actually with Alicia and Maria, all kind of brought it up. And I know it's definitely something that I struggle with. Even, you know, it's early back as middle school and high school, I was famous for overcommitting myself, and I still am. For instance, I've got, you know, this event, and then next Saturday I have another live stream. In November I have another live stream, and today I have a wedding. So it's one thing after another, and it's almost like we don't know when to stop. And you know, you are very busy. You've got the 2 studios, and you're directing plays and earning money for children in Uganda. And how do you know where to cut yourself off and where to say no? And how do you go about actually practicing doing that so that you don't overcommit yourself?
I am the first to admit that this is a weak area for me, and I am not a specialist in a work-life balance, but I am working on improving. So, you know, whether that's just taking a few hours, like in the spring semester, I was trying to read a book a week, you know, just pushing yourself to take time for, you know, whether it's spending time with someone or reading a book or going to a show or somehow separating yourself from your professional work. Because I think, you know, with artists, the thing is we love what we do. So we want to do it from sun up to sundown. But it's also having that awareness of, okay, I'm about to burn myself out and have an ugly cry. So maybe I should take a few hours and do something else. And I think as we start becoming more aware of that, and, you know, even just this past year, it was like one day I woke up and I was like, wow, I've been having, you know, 14 to 16 hour work days for almost a decade. And I think it's time that I scale back on that. But that's how it happens. It hits you over the head. And I think it's really important that you don't get yourself to a place where you might be like, if I continue on this path, then I'm going to regret the opportunities and things that I've missed out on. So I think just, you know, moments of reflection. And that all kind of started with me when I went to a leadership seminar in 2014, and we did a lot of introspection about our strengths and our weaknesses and where we thrive and where we sort of drown. And from that moment forward, I was thinking about it more and more. And this past year, I really thought about it. And now I'm trying to sort of put some things into practice. But it's not as easy as it sounds. And I'm certainly not a specialist in work-life balance, but I am a work-life balance and training person, and I'm trying to get better day by day. So I think as long as you're aware of maybe if you do overcommit or if you do maybe work a little too much, but you're just trying to make little small nuggets of adjustment, then that's progress. And I always think progress should be celebrated.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to kind of see where you are. Like it's hard to visualize where you're going, and you don't realize you're going to be too busy until you're in the heat of it. And you're like, I probably shouldn't have done this. I did too much again. And, you know, just being aware, though, that you tend to do that is really valuable. Where do you go for, like, your mentorship or your resources? Like, if you are in a situation where you don't have an answer, what do you do, and who do you go to find that?
So I am very lucky to have like a wealth of knowledge surrounding me. And I don't know how I'm so lucky that all these amazing people are in my life, but depending on what the situation is, the list is very different. And I think that's, you know, that's another good point in terms of embracing change is don't close yourself off to meeting as many people as possible, because you never know who might be the next person to really help you through something or through a situation. And I think collaborating, and, you know, I have my friends in the dance industry, but I also have my friends in the theater industry. And then I just have my friends and my family. And I think knowing that support network, but obviously keeping your like intimate relationships like in a smaller circle, those true people that you can really trust, is super important. You know, and I have a friend that says that, you know, you are represented by the 5 people that you spent the most time with. So just kind of thinking about that, and, you know, who do you spend time with that you look to as a mentor, but who do you spend time with that you look to as a mentee, or who do you spend time with that just brings you sanity and happiness? You know, it's just kind of finding that balance of the people in your life and then appreciating them. And one thing is, with my network, I try not to be overly selfish, and it's really important to reach out to them and say, hey, how are things going? You know, how are you doing today? And I'm really lucky that I have so many friends that do that to me as well. And I think that's just the important thing, and just remembering to tell people thank you and to show them appreciation for the things that they do for you. I believe that an attitude of gratitude really is like a big cornerstone of success.
Yeah, and every time I see you, like, you're always positive, you're always bubbly. You even like at recital this past year, I don't even remember the situation now, but there was a mess. And you were just like, you know, we're going to plow through it. It's fine. We're going to keep going. And like, there's nothing that could get you to say anything negative. You're just constantly positive. And that brought the rest of the staff kind of into that positive atmosphere. And that made a really big difference. I find that, like, if I'm in a bad mood and then someone else is in a bad mood and then someone else is in a bad, it's like it's contagious.
It's a disaster. Everyone gets in a bad mood.
It's not good. I don't want that backstage.
You know, I think another part of embracing change is never saying like, I'm too good for this, right? So I always said, like, if I'm going to own a business, like, I may not do it every single week, but there are still going to be weeks when I go in and I Clorox wipe the toilets, or I clean the mirrors, which is like, cleaning the mirrors is like my least favorite thing to do, but it's good, it's healthy. Or like, maybe I'm not able to teach like as many classes every single week with like everything else that's going on, but just being able to get in there and make sure that I do have like these interactions and experiences with every age group at different parts of the year. It's just really good in building awareness and understanding and empathy what your staff and students and clients are going through. So I think never closing yourself off to that all-encompassing sphere of what's happening like in your world is super important, even if it's not glamorous all the time.
Toilets. Yeah.
Yes. Like your payroll experience.
Yeah, I had to do payroll this past week because my boss was out of town, and I mean, this is the second year that I've done this, and I have to do it again in a month, and I'm already stressed about it because I'm just really, really dyslexic and not good at numbers. But it's just like, I guess it's really hard to find that balance between like embracing change, embracing new opportunities, new experiences, but also not overloading yourself to the point where you can't actually function very well. And that's where we need resources. We need communication. We need, really, really good people that we can go to, and just people that you can trust and that are going to hold you accountable and say, hey, dude, you need to take a month off or something.
Yeah. Or, it's even just like not having like a panic reaction when like something happens that maybe you have no clue how to do. Like, remember the day that you fixed the toilet?
Yeah.
That was amazing. I was relying on my resources.
Yeah, it was really ridiculous. You come in and you're like, so I think I broke the toilet, and I don't know anything about toilets, but I just kind of messed around with it and hoped for the best. But you didn't like
better than ever since.
Yeah, but you didn't freak out and like call a plumber and cost yourself, $150. So I would always say you got to do what you can with what you got.
Yeah.
And
there's training videos on YouTube, or, like we had a log break like a couple months ago, and I was like FaceTiming everyone I knew with like, hey, take a look at this log. But it's little things like that of, it can be a crisis and you can be like in full on meltdown, ugly cry mode, or you can be like, okay, here's a problem. What am I going to do to fix it?
Here's the challenge of the day.
Here is my training opportunity today.
Yeah, that's a really good
plumber stage door dance. I'll be coming to you for all the toilet problems.
Don't call me for toilet problems, Chesta.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. So like, okay, one more question for you. What if I'm sure you get parents asking you questions all the time about stuff that you have put in emails already, and that you know, you've already created a document with this, you've already put out this memo, and people are still coming to you or texting you or emailing you and asking you the same stupid question over and over again. How do you deal with that?
So this is an area where I feel like that I've grown a lot personally, because it used to be really frustrating. But now I've gotten to a point where I'm like, you know what? These people do have a lot going on. And I have a lot going on. And yeah, maybe they should have read it, but also they are my clients and we have, you know, paperwork and systems in place. So it really doesn't take that much time to forward them the email again or just to give them a gentle reminder. And I think having empathy towards clients who's, you know, maybe they're juggling 3 children's extracurricular activities, or, you know, maybe they are going through a divorce or separation or dealing with family illness or have a sick, you know, mom or dad. We never know like what the circumstances of their life are. So I'm really trying to approach all of my interactions with just a little extra understanding and fluff, because I find that goes a long way in building relationships and building brand and business loyalty.
That's really good. Yeah.
It's an exercise to practice, because it is easy to get frustrated, especially when you've done so much preparation on the back end. But, you know, just understanding these people are coming to you and are excited to pay you for a service. And maybe there's like 1 or 2 things I can do to make their lives a little bit easier. Yeah. And then that's going to make them remember what we do a little more in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're going to remember that customer service experience where you know, you're in the middle of something busy, you stop and, you know, print out that flyer for them again. They're going to remember that. It's going to mean a lot to them.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all humans. And if we all just take a little bit better care of each other, we might all just feel a little more loved and happy, you know?
Yeah, but yeah, there'd be a lot less hate in the world if we treated people the way.
Yeah, so in my little nugget of, you know, ballet, tap, and jazz, that's how we are going to approach things.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Chasso. You've been amazing as always. And I appreciate.
I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
I'll see
you later. Bye.
Let's see. Yeah, I love everything that Shasta has to say. She's always got something positive to kind of get me back focused. I'll go in her office sometimes and I'm just like, oh, this happened and that happened and this kid is doing this and that parent said this. And she's just like, redirect, get it back to the positive. It's really awesome. I would love to share just a tiny little tidbit for the last like couple minutes that we have. Just a little thing, little ditty on creating documents or resources that people will actually read. I have a degree in professional writing and editing, and I'm actually using that degree, which is exciting. Not many English majors get a chance to say that, but I've gone through a lot of websites. I've seen a lot of flyers. I've seen a lot of recital memo pages and emails and all these different things that, you know, studio owners and teachers are trying to get their parents to read things, and parents don't always read them. Why? It's not because they don't want to know. And like Shasta was saying, they want to pay us money. It's not like they don't want to know. They want to know when their kid's recital is. They want to know what time they have to show up, but they don't necessarily read the information that we give them, or maybe they do, but they just don't recall it. And so I have found, just through, you know, the 5 different studios that I've taught at since I started teaching, there's a lot of different ways that you can put together content, and there's only really one way that people are going to read it and understand it, and not just skim over it and forget about it. And so this is kind of my formula for creating a document that people are going to read and understand everything that is on the page, and they're not going to come to you and ask the question that is answered on that page. So this is what I go to. Your header should be 1 line. It should be really big letters, and it shouldn't be more than a couple words. It should summarize what you're about to talk about. So let's say I'm going to send an email out to parents, and it is a deadline for registration. I want to say registration deadline, sign up cutoff, something really, really short and clear and concise in big, bold letters. You want, especially if it's going to be something that's read on a computer, you want to stay away from serif fonts. So a serif font is a font that has little feet on the bottom of them. Don't use those. They make the screen really, really pixelated, and it actually hurts your eyes more to read them. So use typefaces and fonts that don't have those little things at the bottom, that we call them serifs, which is feet, is the word for foot. I think it's Latin, maybe. Context. Really, really, really short and concise. No more than 3 bullet points, maybe 5 if it's like major, major stuff. If you're not doing like specific points, that's fine. You don't have to, but you can think of these as paragraphs. Don't put more than like 1 tidbit in each paragraph. Make your words really, really few and far between. Use as few words as you can possibly use to get your point across. Okay, and then go through and highlight or bold the most important words, the words that are the summary of that paragraph. So registration cutoff date, paragraph 1, just a reminder the school year starts this day and this time. I would highlight this day and make it bold or make it underlined. Don't do all of them. That's just overwhelming and annoying. But pick something and make that sort of like, hey, this is me. This is what this paragraph is about. Okay. After that, just a reminder to pay your deposit and pay the first month by this time. I would bold the word deposit. That's it. Just now you've gotten the word. You've got, your deadline and your deposit, and then the one last thing that you want to focus on that email. Be prepared for class. Do as little text as possible. People don't want to read a paragraph. People don't want to read a manual to get started. Now, there's nothing wrong with manuals. I create manuals. That's what my degree is in. In fact, I've created a manual for students. It's called Dance Class Etiquette, a student guide, and it's a 6-page book on what ballet teachers specifically, it applies to other dance forms as well, but specifically what ballet teachers expect of their dance students and how students are to act in class. And it's long. It's got a lot of bullet points. But the way that it's written is simply taking as much information and condensing it into as few words as possible. And so using that method of as few words as possible to communicate the idea, explaining things concisely, that is how you're going to get your documents to be something that people will actually read, rather than just another email from the dance studio, get rid of it. Or even just parents who don't have time to read. I mean, just like Shasta was saying, we've got a lot of busy people in our lives. And what I was saying earlier, we've got a lot of really busy people. Our culture is different than it used to be. We have kids doing 5 different curricular activities on different days of the week, and their parents are busy. They don't have time to sit down and read a whole thing. So tell them as much information as you can in the shortest amount of time possible, in as few words as possible. And for the people who don't have time to do even that, bolding those keywords are going to be at least things that will bring their eyes to that sentence or to that point, even to the point where their brain will say, oh, okay, so this is the email I need to read when I need to get information on this topic. And then they can save it and they'll know which email to go back to. Oh yeah, she did send an email about that. I remember reading something about it. I didn't read it, but I remember something about it. Even just that is that little extra to get people to engage more with the stuff that you put out. Now, along the same lines with resources, I would like to show you the resources that I have available for your dance studio. I run Beyond the Bar, as I'm sure was mentioned a couple times. It's a ballet blog, but I also run Beyond the Bar Shop, which have a lot of digital downloads. And so I want to just quickly share my screen with you like this. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share with you some of the different documents that I have. All of my documents are either the general guide or the customized guide. And so let's say the general guide is going to be something very simple that communicates a lot of information in a very short amount of space. And this is the Your Little Dancer guide. This is all about explaining to parents how dance is valuable to their students, including, the very, very young children, such as ages 0 to 6, and what they're actually going to get out of it. And so, this is something that you would be able to, if you had a parent ask you, is my 3-year-old really going to get anything out of dance class? This would be something where you could say, yeah, actually, it's really good for their motor development. It's great for their positive self-esteem. Here's a little brochure that you can read all about it, and then they can read on their own time. So that's the kind of thing that I create. Now, the other thing that I do is create custom guides. So let's say for our dress code, this breaks down the importance for dress code. It's actually on sale right now. The importance for dress code and having your hair in a bun in your dance class. For the customized guides, I would put all your own pictures in the brochure. I would also put your logo on the front or on the back, wherever I can fit it, right? I've got it back here on the demonstration. I would actually, instead of just saying it's important for your hair to be in a bun, I would say we require our students to wear their hair in a bun, or we require black leotard, pink tights, ballet shoes with the strings tucked in. And so it would be specific to your studio. And so right now, the viewers of the conference can get 50% off of anything and everything in the store, with the exception of the website redesign, which is a little bit more pricey. But everything that you will add to your cart, the 50% off coupon will work on the entire cart, not just on one particular product. It will take 50% off your entire order. So I definitely recommend going through there, checking it out. Like I said, I've got the Supporting Your Dancer, which is basically teaching parents how to make sure that their dancer is ready for class. Teaching parents to be respectful to the dance teacher so that their child will be respectful to the dance teacher, what they can expect. Then I've also got the dress code, and then I've got the dance class etiquette. I've had a lot of people ask about coloring pages and handouts. That is my next big project. I'm going to be creating coloring pages and handouts that you can distribute in your class. That will hopefully reinforce some of the stuff that you teach them in class, and also just give them that little extra bit at home of being like, oh yeah, that thing we worked on in class, how do we do that? And even just going through it in their heads is going to make the biggest difference in their dance experience. And also because kids love coloring. I mean, who doesn't love I love coloring. And so I've got a whole bunch of coloring pages that I'm working on. My light box just came in the mail today. I'm super excited about it. And yeah, that's what we've got as far as the direction that I am headed. I hope that everybody enjoyed, and I hope that you all have an opportunity to check out Maria Lyons' course that she has put together. Go to Alicia's page and see her Magnificent Movement curriculum. It's really awesome. And the next conference that we have is going to be in November. It's called The Healthy Dancer, and it's going to be completely focused on nutrition for dancers, injury prevention, safe stretches. It's going to be something directed towards
pre-professional and pre-competitive dancers, serious dancers, and also specifically towards dance parents in ways that they can support their dancer mentally, emotionally, physically, foods to prepare for them. We've got a lot of guests coming in to speak. I'm not going to name any names yet because they're not totally confirmed, but a couple of them are pretty recognizable, and it's going to be amazing. So if you want to sign up to be notified on that, you can go to beyondthebarshop.com, and you can sign up to be notified on when enrollment begins. That one is not going to be a free stream. That one is going to be, I want to say, $35 a person. It's a weekend conference. And it's November 4th, 5th, and 6th. And so there's going to be probably 8 to 12 hours worth of conference time that you'll have access to. Like I said, it's going to be super cool. And yeah, thanks guys so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed. This live video is going to be available for the next, I want to say, 8 hours on YouTube. So share it and spread the links, spread the love, and embrace whatever is coming up next in your lives. Thanks, guys. See you later.